Now, you guys know I've been giving you a lot of stories about people who have served in very difficult situations and have been faced with very challenging circumstances from their chain of command. But today's going to be a little different because we are going to take on NATO. And a lot of our military members will serve at some point or another at a NATO command. And while I had a wonderful experience at NATO, and so did my guest in some levels, there are a lot of things and challenges that are never ever spoken about when we talk about serving on a NATO staff. And what was surprising to me about this story is that the same things that I talk about that need to be fixed in the regular military happened under NATO, which is of no surprise because a lot of times, as we found, the NATO does follow the United States lead in a lot of these situations. So, Andres, how are you doing today?
Good, doing well. Thank you for having me over.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Stories of Service podcast, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And as we always do, to get these shows started, we will do an intro from my father, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter, hear from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And U.S. Marine Officer Andres Caceres shares a sweeping and difficult account of service integrity and the consequences he faced for raising warnings that senior leaders did not want to hear. He has served combat tours in Iraq and the southern Philippines, as well as me, by the way, later taking on the humanitarian leadership as a commander during the Fukushima tsunami and radiation disaster relief operations, and as a foreign area officer, better known as a FAO, specializing in Southeast Asia. He built a career at the intersection of security, diplomacy, and regional expertise. Then from 2013 to 2015, he was assigned to NATO headquarters in the Netherlands, the higher headquarters responsible for overseeing the U.S.-led mission at that time in Afghanistan. During this period, he repeatedly warned of growing Taliban momentum, the weaknesses of the Afghan National Army, the emergence of the Islamic State, and signs of Russian activity preceding the 2014 invasion of Ukraine. And his efforts to raise the alarm were met with resistance. He was told to stop briefing on these issues, watching his point papers and analysis destroyed, and ultimately facing retaliation for assisting senior leaders confront the realities on the ground. And what followed, and what we're going to talk about today, is a series of accusations he describes as fabricated: disobeying orders, mutiny, dereliction of duty, and sexual harassment. When leadership discovered he was gathering evidence, his own evidence, to challenge these charges, he was stripped of his clearance, removed from the command building, and accused by a senior female officer of threatening her. Later sent to a board of inquiry, he maintains 2 senior officers lied under oath. And although he's presented evidence which is, by the way, in this book right here, Criminal Negligence in Command, despite this evidence, he later discovered his medical records had been altered, and including fabricated medical appointments. And 2 members of that board voted to remove him from service, despite the fact that, by the way, there was a member on that board who did not vote to remove him from service. So today we're going to talk more about that. And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. A little cold here in the Netherlands, but yeah, doing well.
Yeah. So we did this show a little earlier in the day. So you notice I'm usually on later in the day, but today, because of the time zone with you, we're doing it a little earlier. So hopefully people can catch the replay if they can't join us in person. But first off, as I always start all of these podcasts with anyone who serves, which is the majority of my guests, where were you born and raised, and what inspired you to join the Marine Corps?
So I was born in Lima, in Peru, and my family migrated to the United States legally. We settled in Puerto Rico for quite a while. And my mother always talked about how impressed she was with the Marines. She mentioned walking very close to one of their trajectories, I think university or whatever it was, and walking by the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires. And at that time, Marines were posted outside the doors safer days. Mm-hmm. And she would see the uniforms, and the times that she had to go in because of visas, she was always impressed at how sharp they looked. So I was always kind of subliminally bombarded with, if you're going to join, you're the Marines, you're going to join. So I blame my mom.
Right.
But yeah, that's how that came about. Then I went to college in the States, in New Hampshire. And there they had Army ROTC, they had Air Force ROTC. I started with the Army 1 until a buddy of mine told me, he's like, dude, just forget ROTC, do OCS. I'm like, what is that? he told me all about it. I walked over he drove me down to Portsmouth, where they had an OSO office selection office. I walked in there and we started the paperwork, and yeah, it was a fantastic decision.
What a different of climate from going from Peru and Puerto Rico to New Hampshire.
Very much. It was the first time I saw the snow, and it was the first snow was usually in November, usually the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
and it didn't leave until like June. I remember May we would have spring fling. Spring fling was a big party, and there were still chunks of ice on the floor. I mean, it was big chunks of ice. Not that they've been piled up, but like really had not melted yet. So yeah, it was. Oh yeah, it was definitely. And culturally,
I was going to say culturally too. There's a song called New Hampshire. It's in the same theme as New York from Jay-Z. You should watch it. And it has like all these cultural references to New Hampshire, because New Hampshire is kind of like one of those places in the United States that's its own country all by itself.
Oh yeah. I went ice fishing. I mean, I had the local stuff. I remember we used to go down to in Maine, right across the border, very close. Is it Kittery, I believe, or Algonquin, wherever they had the ports, and the fishermen would come back with lobsters, and they would start sorting out the lobsters, the funky ones versus the good ones, the ones that couldn't sell. And for a couple of bucks, I mean, $5-6, we could get 2 or 3 funky looking lobsters, which is fine. It's just for us. We throw them in the grill, and we do that a couple of times a year. It was always awesome. It was a great time. It's a great time.
So you joined the Marine Corps under the OCS program?
I did.
Okay. And what was your first few years like in the Marine Corps? Tell me a little bit about that.
It was interesting. So I went to OCS, and after that, I went back to college for my last year, and then I went to. I had about a 6-month delay to enter because they just didn't have orders for me. So I went to Germany. I was learning German at the university. And I could, at the time, the German government had a program that if you could pass an intermediate level of German and a standardized test, not college credits, a standardized test, then you could get working permit in Germany up to 6 months. So I took it. I applied. I got it. So I went off to Germany to work until I had orders. And then by October, that's when I had a ticket, very flexible ticket at the time. And then by October, my OSO, the officer, my recruiter, was like, hey, November 28th, I think it was, you have to report after Thanksgiving. No problem. No issues. So I flew back, and and that's when I went to the Marine Corps. I did TBS. I went to Lago School, logistics school. And then I went to Yuma, Arizona, and that place was interesting. It's called the armpit of the Marine Corps by many people for a reason. A lot of alternative lifestyle people that don't quite square up with the UCMJ. Let me put it that way. Yeah. They try to do the whole fruit upside down kind of thing. So a lot of those. We also had a lot. But the thing is that because Yuma is so hot and it's such a crappy place, nobody from the headquarters wants to come visit.
Wow.
Our headquarters is either Pendleton or Miramar. And they go to San Diego, they go to Miramar, they go to Pendleton, but they never come to Yuma. So all this stuff was going on. It was really disheartening to see a lot of very heavy officers. I mean, they look like 19 months pregnant. Master sergeants the same way. I mean, it was bad. So it
lack of standards and discipline.
It was. And
disgusting. I'm putting you on full screen just so people can see you better. But so just in general, just a lack of standards and discipline.
It was disgusting what I saw. But I remember we had our first. We had a change of command, and we had a fantastic battalion commander who ended up being a 3-star. And I was a training officer at the time. And when he checked in, he came and within 2 days, 3 days, I had to stand in front of him, front of center, and he chewed me a new one because how come all these, I'm walking around and I see all these people, that I'll definitely meet standards. He asked me how many people do you have on weight control, and I was like, we got 2. And then he started screaming for not doing my job, and I just stood there and took it. And once he told me the I need to say, it's like, sir, I tried, but neither the sergeant major, who was obese, nor the CO, who was also obese, and the XO was involved in these. He was in shape, but he's involved in these alternative lifestyles. I was like, would allow any of these guys to be on weight control? He's like, what? So I think that was like a Wednesday. And then he pulled in the new XO, good guy, and told him, XO, I want a battalion run, a squadron run on this Friday. and it was his pace. And this battalion commander was in good shape. I think lieutenants and lance corporals could keep up with him essentially, and the XO. The XO was a good runner. So I remember he was like, "You're staying with me right next to me." I was right next. I was right next. I was getting the whole run. It was like a 4 mile run, I think it was. I was literally, I could smell him the whole way. And once we got to the battalion headquarters, he's like, "Come on here," and he put me right there. And he told me to grab a notebook and have it ready. And afterwards, like, now, he's like, "Anybody that passes by this line, now you put him on the list." And I jotted down like 70 names, and most of them were sergeants and above, some chief warrant officers. I mean, people that were severely out of shape. And in the previous regime, they were just like, "I can do whatever I want because the old CO is going to help me up, and the new COs were going to be the same way." Oh no,
that's an amazing story. Like, wow, that's wonderful.
But that was like the first time that I was like, oh, this is the real Marine Corps they're talking about.
Yeah, and this is somebody who's not afraid to be a leader and not afraid to hold a standard and say, "I'm accountable, and this is my problem, and I'm going to fix it."
Oh yeah, and so it was me. I had 2 training Marines. I had a corporal and a sergeant, and we had a line. I mean, it looked like the unemployment line of people to get weighed in and get their names and start the program. And we were doing those packages. The corporal was typing, I was typing, the sergeant was typing, and we were happy. We're like, finally. We're finally holding these guys accountable. Finally. Oh, yeah.
It's such a relief when somebody comes in and actually wants to fix problems. Yeah. And sadly, as we'll discuss throughout this call, there's so few people in the military these days that are willing to do what you just said. Yep. And that's part of the problem. That's why so many of us got out, because we were just tired of seeing what exactly you were talking about.
Yeah. He cleaned up the squadron. Good. He cleaned it up. And I was so thankful and grateful. Yeah,
that's a great early example of leadership.
I was a first lieutenant, brand new first lieutenant at the time, and I was just like, so this is what they're talking about. This is what I actually learned. This is what they preached me at TBS. It's not just completely BS.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. So tell me a little bit about how your career progressed, because at some point you decided to go into FAO as a Marine, which is also a really rare thing for a Marine to become a FAO.
There are not many of us. We're a dying species, and we have a problem with reproduction. Anyway, so I applied for the first time when I was a young first lieutenant. I had PCA'd to another. Funny thing is that the FAT CO had arranged to get rid of me to another unit within the base, and I didn't know about it. There were orders that were kind of hidden from me, and all of a sudden I got PCA orders because I was right on the cages.
You were shaking up the system, and people are threatened by that.
So when the new CO came in, the arrangement was already done, and I didn't know about it, and I was told like later on. Anyway, so I moved over, and I went to a Max 1. It's a lot of former Hawk system, the anti-aircraft missiles that we got rid of in the 90s. Okay, they were still there, and a lot of these guys were waiting to retire, and so on. So I applied to become a foreign air officer. But later on, I find out that the group commander, the squadron, the group commander, non-recommended me. And the reason why he non-recommended me was because he had a major he was buddies with, who didn't have half of my qualifications. At the time, I could pass 2 defense language proficiency tests, both German and Spanish. And so I could prove, hey, if you give me any language, I can learn it. But he couldn't speak any other languages other than English. But he was a major. He's a former, he couldn't promote because his MOS had gone away, and he was his buddy. So they gave him the recommendation. They non-rec me. So I essentially didn't make it to the board. He got picked up.
Totally relate to this. Yeah. I ended up almost getting selected for a deployment when I was a lieutenant because of the fact that somebody had been passed over for deployments because they were not qualified and people didn't want him, but they felt sorry for the guy and they wanted him to make 04. And they were going to swap me at the last minute and send him instead of me. And I was so upset because I still had all my stuff in storage and I was ready to go on this deployment. I went walking into, I'll never forget it, Russ Wolfkill's office, the PAO, and said, "You have to give me I broke down crying. I was so upset. I was like, you moved me here, had me change my orders and come early to this unit in Pace West so that I could go on this deployment. And now you're telling me that you're going to replace it with somebody that just needs to promote?" No. And thankfully in that case, I was, but the fact that they even threatened that just upset me, and sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah, it's the buddy, system. So
Yeah.
and it was very frustrating. So then I remember I had a gunnery sergeant that pulled me to the side. He's like, "Sir, I know that clown. I work with him. He's nowhere near you." He said, "But look at it from this way. You got time to prepare for the next time.
And it just makes you want it even that much more.
He's like,
Yeah.
it won't be next year. It
Yeah.
won't be the following year, but you have this time to prepare."
Good.
It's like, see it as you miss varsity, but you still got some time. Next time, come back stronger. And I kept that in mind. And then the years went by. I went to Okinawa, and when I was Okinawa, I was constantly gone. I went to Iraq. I went to Southern Philippines, combat, blah blah, a whole bunch of deployments. Korea,
right, and you mentioned
times.
even in your podcast, I think with Adam, or it might have been in your book, even like you were never like that kind of person in combat that was like, oh, I just want to stay in the rear and I want to just. No. You were always in front. It sounded like.
I originally was sent to work and live in the Puzzle Palace. And I was able to squeeze my way with some of the patrols with Death Mountain Division.
That's great.
And some of the other National Guard units also assigned under 10th Mountain. Mm-hmm. I went out also I was with the Iraqi Security Forces, so it's constantly training. So as much as kind of I went through several pairs of boots.
And you wanted to see what you guys were doing. Like if you're going to be the one that's supplying all the logistics and the supplies for it, you want to see. I was the same way as a PAO. Yeah. I never wanted to be the PAO stuck at headquarters. I was like, no, I want to go out there. I want to be with the EOD techs. I want to be with the Navy SEALs. I want to be taking the pictures. I want to be writing the stories on the ground.
Yep. I get it. And exactly. I mean, I'm not interested in Subway. I'm not interested in Burger King, or they didn't have Starbucks, so they had whatever else was a little coffee place. I'm not interested in that stuff. I take an MRE, whatever. I went several times with the Ukrainians. It was a province, and I stayed with them to see what they were doing. Because if I'm providing the equipment and the training, that's one thing I didn't do. I did everything, not just logistics. I mean, we did personnel, we did manning, we did training. Sure. Actually, hand-on-hand training, training manuals, getting them translated, and so on. Establishing and also coming back and okay, what's the effect? We were able to do this. Now what can they do? Okay, do we have a platoon level train? Can they do individual platoon level operations? Yes, they can. Not just report it, sir. I actually witnessed it and I went on a patrol with them. That kind of interaction, being able to brief it. I was there.
Yep,
I did it with them. We did passage of lines. We did passage of danger areas. And I was there with them. So it was not just some guy just reading the briefs. So and then on my last year, then I went on the MEU, 2 pumps, and I was never in Okinawa. A good evidence that I didn't spend much time in Okinawa was that when I left Okinawa, I spoke more Tausug than Japanese. Tausug being the language of the southern Philippines, one of many languages in the southern Philippines, in the little islands. So I spoke more of Tausug, which eventually allowed me to, from what I understand, my time in Southeast Asia allowed me to then be selected to be an Indonesian FAO. So, which I did straight out of Okinawa, and then I went to Monterrey for 2 years.
So now you're speaking how many languages? Like you're already up to like 3 or 4 at this point?
At this point, officially on paper, only 3. English, Spanish, and German. I had not passed any other defense language proficiency test until then. I went to Monterrey. I did my master's. And in the master's program at Monterrey, if you're a FAO, you don't have to do a thesis. So you can forego the thesis because you're going to go to language school right after. So they say, it's not the same academically, but it's similar in effort. Okay. Or worse. It depends which way you see it. But being the son of an academic, my dad's a PhD. I was like, I cannot tell my dad I hold a master's degree without a thesis, unless it's an MBA, or law school. Right. I know he'll embrace it. I know he'll be fine with it, but I just can't.
Your dad being an academic, I didn't catch that in your book or the other show I listened to. So that's also a really interesting detail that explains your kind of warrior monk / because very few people have this combination. I would say my buddy Bill Brown has it, where you're sort of kind of you're kind of in both worlds, where you can kill things and kill people and break things, I guess, and your ability to do that, but then your also ability to be a very deep and intellectual thinker. And I think really those make the best war fighters.
I try the latter. I can do it very well. I try the latter. So my dad's a PhD in math. Not having an A in math in high school was not an option. at
I
all.
see. Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure.
I'm still very good at math, even though I'm an international lawyer now. I'm still very good at math.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, I finished my PhD a year and a half ago, and I used a lot of math, reasoning, and logic
I
to
bet.
do my legal arguments.
Yeah.
It's Spider-Man. What's that movie? Spider-Man: No Way Home, when he gets strapped or he's fighting Doctor Strange. He says, "You know
Mm-hmm.
what's cooler than math? What's cooler than the magic? Math."
Yeah.
Because he discovers the geometrical parameter. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so I volunteered at NPS. I want to do a thesis. Well, you're crazy. You only have 1 year. I'm like, the German students do.
Right.
The Turkish students do.
Yeah.
Am I an American or an American?
Yes. Right, right. Well, and I saw that too at NATO. Like, honestly, like these other countries, they are so much stricter on like how their people can take leave and the less benefits that they get. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't get like these comfy retirement packages that we
Not
do.
at
They don't
all.
get all this disability that we do. I mean,
No,
I'm grateful for all this, don't get me
not at
wrong,
all.
but
Not
we
at all.
really need to be kind of thankful. And if you haven't
Yeah.
served on an international staff, you don't really
Yeah.
understand
No.
like the level of work that some of these guys have to put
Yeah.
into just to get the same opportunities that we take for granted.
Oh yeah.
So I totally understand it.
The Brits, they have something similar to like the GI Bill, but it only covers if you're going to go be a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, if you're going to be engineering,
Yeah.
not even like an extra year if you're doing math or whatever,
No.
science.
No.
No, barely anything. But I mean, you can go to a bar and a veterans bar and grab a drink. That's not what it is. It's very minimal compared to what we have. So, so I was like, I'm here. I've got all the time in the world. I'm gonna do a thesis. So I
Mhm.
finished it, and then I went to DLI, and I had a 9-month program for Indonesian, which I finished early in 6 months. So to
Mhm.
finish early, you have to do all the trimesters,
Right.
and you have to pass the reading, the listening, and the speaking with a 2+, maximum being 3. And I finished that in 6 months.
Wow.
So I finished all my academics, everything in 6 months. Simultaneously, I self-taught Malay, which is very similar to Indonesian.
Mhm.
It's considered older,
Right.
an older form of Indonesian in some aspects. And I had a friend of mine that told me about it. It's like, dude, have you passed the DLPT for Portuguese? I'm like, I don't speak Portuguese. It's like, you should give it a shot. It's like, I did for both Brazilian and Portuguese. I was like, really? And yeah, he tells me, it's like, yeah, just get to, it wasn't Duolingo or something else. Just take this, practice it for however much, I know what you like, and then take the test. And sure as hell, before I left Monterrey, I had passed, I was fluent officially in German, Spanish, obviously English, Brazilian Portuguese, Portuguese, Indonesian, and Malay.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
As
That
soon as
makes
I
you
left.
very valuable as a FAO. And so now you're in your FAO tours. Is that what happens
Yeah,
next?
it's the
Okay.
payback. It's the payback. They don't call it payback. They call it the utilization tour.
Okay.
It's a
So
payback.
so where do you go?
So I went to, no, back. So the program, in order to keep you current with your MOS, I sent you back to your MOS. I became a commander in Iwakuni, Japan.
Okay.
So I was a commander in Iwakuni, Japan. I inherited a unit that was marred with
That's right.
nepotism. And there was an unofficial chain of command. So if you were friends with a lady that was married to at the top,
Yep.
then your husbands had direct access to that particular person. So you had sergeants disrespecting gunnies.
Sure.
And lance corporals doing whatever they wanted because they hung out with the spouse of this particular person. There was an illegal fund. It was for the spouses that was being supplied by government funds. And I was like, I've never heard of this. And when I took over, I asked the senior enlisted, can you look into this? And I bounced it off a couple of lawyers, and they're like, yeah, that's like heavy illegal. Like, this rates an investigation. I'll get rid of it right now. And we did. So we used the funds for a barbecue for the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there were a lot of spouses complaining, whatever. This and that. I'm a CEO of Marines and Sailors, not all spouses.
Yeah. And I remember you writing in the book right here, highly recommend it, about how the discipline problems in your unit dropped like drastically during your time there?
Yeah. So one of the issues that we had a lot of problems with corporals getting in trouble. Not so much less corporals and PFCs. It was corporals getting in trouble. So they were having a hard time. They would put on the rank, but they had a hard time disengaging with hanging out with the lance corporals. I understand you're gonna have friendships.
Sure.
Like I totally get that. I totally get that. Senior captains, they pick up major, and there's still a relationship with that captain.
Yeah.
Who's probably very junior because they were captains together. But there's a point that you gotta stop. Maintain the warmth, maintain the respect, maintain the love.
Right.
Little L, no.
Yeah, but be a professional.
But let's be professional, and yes sir, yes ma'am. We gotta respect the structure. Gotta respect the rank both ways. So what's happening is these corporals were picking up rank, and all of a sudden making their former friends or the friends lance corporals, making them drink excessively, and abusing that rank. So I decided to put in. I created what they call it the C.O.S book club, and what I would grab a book, and I will make him read a chapter, not the whole book, but just a chapter, and it'll be about somebody, a Marine or a soldier or an airman or a sailor making a critical decision in a battle in the Philippines. And we go through it, and then we will go to the chow hall. The chow hall manager loved me because I'll bring in, every other week, all the corporals and the sergeants. Sometimes a sergeant, sometimes a corporal, sometimes all together. We sit around with the NCOs, and we would chow down, and then halfway into the chow, I start asking questions. Tell me about this. And it became really embarrassing for them if they didn't read, or if I called them out and didn't participate because they didn't read. So it became a self-policing unit.
Yeah, you basically used positive peer pressure to turn the unit around.
Exactly. And I had a couple of corporals that never read. They're like, sir, I want to argue this, and they kept coming back, kind of like trying to make up. And I'm like, good, hey, Echevarria, you good. I love that point. And then I asked some really, really tough questions out there. These are tough questions. It can go either way.
Sure.
Don't try to kill somebody because it's an answer you don't want to hear. So and I did that, and I also started making my corporals and above wear colored shirts on leave, on liberty. Say you're wearing a colored shirt because if you dress professional, you act professional.
You'll be treated like a professional.
Absolutely, and you act professional. And we had a lot. Every weekend we had an issue, and we went through 364 days without a single alcohol-related incident.
That's awesome. That's unheard of. That is for how many people? How many people was this?
We had 150.
Yeah, that's absolutely unheard of.
Going 10 days, going double digits, is unheard of.
Yep,
it's unheard of. And we went 364 days. And then what I started doing was I was like, look, when it came to the winter, because we had MWR at the time, had on Marine Rec, whatever it was, had snowboards and snow equipment, and I was like, hey, I want the smaller units to go out to the ski slopes, which are an hour and a half away. They could rent a van at a minimal price from base, pack it up with all the equipment they got free from base for 3 days, and then go over there for a whole day and get discounted passes, and they loved it. They came back sore, limping,
this is just giving a shit. That's all this is. This is leadership that cares.
Yeah, they were hobbling around because they landed on their butts so many times on the ice. But you know what? They were fixing those vehicles, and they were taking those videos with a smile, laughing and joking and showing pictures. But our productivity improved dramatically.
Yep.
And it's while fellow units would restrict their weekends on Fridays, like you're gonna work until 6, because at the time we also had a curfew in Japan, and you had to be, if you were a lance corporal, you had to be in by 9, I think it was, or 8:30. So what a lot of these guys were doing, they were making them work on weekends, and on Fridays they had them work until 6 p.m. until 1800, which meant that these lance corporals would run to the barracks, get dressed, go out, and in an hour and a half they would do 8 hours of drinking.
Wow.
So they went in trouble out there, or they get in trouble at the gate, or they get in trouble on the side. Sure. So I talked with my CEO. I was like, sir, we're essentially done by noon. My regimental CEO, I was like, I would like to let them loose at 1300. Or I was like, or 1300. No lunch.
Yeah.
1300, you're gone.
Through. Yep.
And then what happened was, like, these guys were like, well, I can I can go to the gym.
Yeah.
I can grab chow,
Yeah.
lay chow. I can take a nap. I can take a shower, and then I'm gonna go see my girlfriend in Osaka.
Yeah.
So they had these girlfriends in Osaka and Kyoto and all these faraway places, and they would go there and not get in trouble, and then come back on time. And I never had anybody going through the wire because I mean you could go out and you didn't have to be on base if you're on Special Liberty. I was signing off Special Liberties left and right, and these guys were having a time, and we never had an issue. And I remember our group, our general, our 1-star come over with a group sergeant major. And he's like, and they asked, how do you get these guys from not getting into trouble? And I was like, Sergeant Major, I treat them like human beings.
Yeah. You gave a shit. I mean, that's the bottom line. And you spent time with them and you developed them.
Yeah.
And you did all the things that we're taught to do as leaders, but so few take the time to actually do. So you had a successful command and
Absolutely.
You left there on a very high note.
Huge.
And I believe JFC Brunson was your next command, correct?
Yep. So I arrived and without a sponsor because the lieutenant colonel, who was a Marine lieutenant colonel over there, refused to sponsor me. He didn't want another Marine there. It was very obvious. So I arrived. I had to do everything on my own. He would refuse to pick me up from the airport. So I had to rent a car, which is not refundable, as you well know, in a PCS. When you change stations, it's not refundable. So I had to make my own reservations.
Yeah, you don't get a rental car at overseas duty stations, even though you will a lot of times not have your car shipped there.
Correct.
Some places won't even let you ship your car because if you're driving on the wrong side of the road or whatever. And London was the same way. They would not. They don't provide a rental car or they don't pay for a car. So so you're already kind of like, you go into this job, you're excited to be there because you've just left on a good and a high note. But then all of a sudden, like, you're just already at the beginning getting bad vibes.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I was excited because that was the high headquarters to ISAF.
Sure.
That was the high headquarters to Afghanistan.
Yeah, International Security Force of Afghanistan.
The U.S. mission there. And I was also, these guys are overwatching what's happening in the Mediterranean. These guys are watching what's happening in the Red Sea. These guys are watching what's happening with the hybrid wars between Russia and the Eastern Bloc, our Eastern partners. So I was so excited, but it was obvious. I mean, and whoever I called was like, no, we don't want to deal with you. And I'm talking U.S. I'm not talking partner nations. I'm talking U.S.
Yeah.
So it was, and getting a reservation was tough because there were only a handful of hotels where you could stay at. But in order to make the reservation, it had to be the sponsor coming up with not orders, but a letter from the command. And I couldn't get that letter from the command. So luckily, by the grace of the Almighty, one of the lady manager of this particular hotel, Adel, I think I forgot the name. She's like, look, I understand. Got it. I'll make a reservation for you. Just make sure that you get this kind of letter later on. I was like,
yeah, you just had to work around him, sadly. Yep.
Thank you. So I arrived. Anyway, I checked in, and to find out that one of the first things that I found out was there's a U.S. senior national representative, a 2-star generals in charge, and then as you well know in NATO, you have the senior members, the senior representatives for every single service.
Right.
So you have the Army element, the Navy element, the Air Force element, and you're supposed to have a Marine element. Well, this Marine lieutenant colonel, he illegally, irresponsibly, and shamefully gave up the command of the Marines to the Navy guys.
Probably just because he just didn't want to be bothered with it, or he thought it would be easier, right?
He didn't want to be a leader.
Right. Yeah.
Essentially, he didn't want to be a leader.
Didn't want to be a leader.
So all of a sudden, we fall under the Navy guys. And the problem with falling under the Navy guys was a lot of problems. One of them, they were, at the senior level, they were very round. These guys were 20 months pregnant. They could hardly move. They were so obese. All, senior officers.
And by the way, this just got even way worse under COVID. I mean, you were serving, this was in 2014, 2015 13
15. Yep.
13 to 15. But this just got 10 times worse over COVID because people didn't even have to take a PT test.
Yep.
And I will say that's one of the things I'm very happy about when it comes to Pete Hegseth is the fact that he has instilled this warrior ethos, which emphasizes fitness and working out. And that's something that all of us can use at any age and at any time. So
Yep.
I'm grateful that has happened. But I can tell you, having served 29 years and 4 months myself and just retiring this past September, I too saw an erosion of standards. And I too saw people who were way out of standards and getting way too fat and getting away with it. I mean, what we just saw, like the Army National Guard land in, I forget where that was, somewhere in the United States, and they got off of a van, and
Texas.
everybody, yeah,
Texas National Guard.
in Texas National Guard, and
Everything's big in Texas.
they were all like huge, and that was just an accidental photo. And so you just really,
the Pillsbury Guardsmen.
yeah. Yeah. So okay. So now you're working for the Navy element. Okay. And
So I'm administratively under the Navy element.
Right. But then you're working as a land operations officer in the JOC.
So the JOC being the Joint Operations Center, and that is the heart of the entire institution. You're looking at what's currently happening. You're reporting on the past 24 hours and the next 24 hours. If anybody needs to know what's going on with operations, you go to the JOC. Essentially, that is the heart. That is where everything is going on. It's like the Wall Street office. It's like the Wall Street, the where the trades are happening, and people go with little tickets and everything, and all the graphs and everything.
That's a great metaphor. Yeah, and there's a JOC in every headquarters command. Exactly. So any headquarters that you go to, whether it was, they might call it the Joint Operations Center, the JIB, the Joint Information Center sometimes, but basically it's the hub of activity for all things operations at any military command.
Correct. And so I get there, and one of the first things that they do is they like, well, okay, we're hurting for people to the watch officer. So there's the JOC only has two positions that are 24/7. The watch officer and the watch chief. And it's like a duty, but you're watching operations. You're not picking up the phone call because somebody got in trouble. And you're getting reports from Afghanistan. You compile them together, and then you're briefing as part of what was called the situational awareness brief, the SAB, which was pitched every morning between 8:30 to 9. My job as a watch officer was to compile everything together, including my portion. After that was the intel portion. After that was the components, the land component, air component, of other stuff not Afghan related.
Sure.
And so I started training to get whatever. And as I'm noticing, what information do you put there? And it was like KIAs, killed in action, wounded in action. This unit participated in this operation. This Afghan unit participated in this training, and that was what it.
So basically, a cut and paste of whatever higher headquarters was saying. It
was cut and paste whatever higher headquarters, and also what ISAF was reporting. So, but not into a whole lot of detail. And having spent time with a lot of artillery folks, I learned effects. So this happened. So what?
Sure.
You destroyed this node of the Taliban. So what? Now we destroy their capability to recruit, pass information, create psychology. We killed 3 ID makers, which are responsible for all the IDs in all these provinces, whatever it is. So what are the effects of what you just did? Don't tell me what you did. What are the effects of what you just did? I mean, similar to sending a sportsman to a particular training. Okay, what are the effects? Okay, now this guy can instead of just doing the 200 meters, now he can do the 300 meters, and he can jump on the hurdles. He went to the training. Good. So what? So, and the effects. So start asking those questions. And then, no, we don't brief that here. So I was like, okay, well, that's a problem. And, at the time, it was just a brief, and nobody showed up to the briefs, which didn't surprise me.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't providing any value. And so but also to paint this picture even more clearly, tell me a little bit about the level of discipline and to show up to work and to do your job.
So I didn't start noticing this on the spot, but I started noticing with time. The JOC director, an Army colonel, would have JOC barbecues from time to time, which is great for camaraderie. It's great for team building. It's great, we're the JOC family, whatever that means. It's fine. But the drinking was out of hand. And it resulted in personnel ending up with their driving privileges restrained because they're going to trouble with the cops, DUIs. And I mean, if that was not a red flag in that one particular party, it continued on.
Right.
And once again, this is not led by, blame it on the French or blame it on the Brits or blame it on the Italians. No, this is U.S. Army led.
Yeah. I mean,
U.S. Army led.
all these countries are following what we're doing. And sadly, the United States tends to think, well, we're the big bully in the China shop. We can do whatever the heck we want.
Yep.
And so sadly, these other countries will see what we do.
Yeah.
And then they see that we're not setting the example. And they're like,
Absolutely not.
well, shit, if they're not going to do it, then I'm not going to do it. And so then you start to have this culture. And I saw it. Don't get me wrong. I've told my audience many times I had a good experience at Marcom. But one of my frustrations working for NATO was the fact that you couldn't hold other nations accountable for anything. Well, you couldn't hold people accountable for anything. I had to treat my employees like volunteers or my people, because I felt like if I pushed them too far, which you couldn't do, there was no mechanism in place to hold them accountable, because people could just go around the system and get their country off, their lead officer for that nation to intervene. And nobody wanted to have an international incident. So everybody was walking around eggshells around each other.
Yeah. And how can I hold other nations accountable when I've got U.S. lieutenant colonels passed out drunk during an exercise in their seat?
Right. Yeah. There's that.
And even we had the SAB, the director of operations, a 2-star U.S. General Air Force, wouldn't show up.
Right. And see, the problem too was the fact that because it's NATO, people are like, oh, you don't have like any like DC oversight. You don't have any real like combatant command. I mean, they're loosely like remotely leading like UCOM, but really it's up to whatever we wanted to do and however we wanted to lead our departments. And I just found that the only way that I was going to survive that place, and thank God I had an incident on the USS Nimitz where I learned firsthand that you can't hold anybody accountable in the military. And so because of that, because I had learned that hard lesson that nobody has your back if you want to hold people accountable, I was like, okay, well, the people that work for me, and some were great, don't get me wrong. I had some awesome people that work for me that just were motivated to work just for the sake of doing the job. But then I had some other people that worked for me that knew that they could just get around me, and they knew that all they had to do was get to somebody higher than me, and then they wouldn't have to do their job. And there was nothing I could do about it.
Yep. And that's how it worked, because the JOC director at the time had his favorites.
Right.
And his favorites could not show up to work because they were too drunk, or be passed out on their seats because they were too drunk, or, do whatever, take off whenever, arrive whenever. It was the Wild West, as they pleased.
Right.
So then again in the briefs, and this once again is early on the first few months, and I start asking questions regarding Afghanistan, because I'm also getting a lot of back chatter from people that have been in Afghanistan telling me, look, the ANA, Afghan National Army, is not as strong as they're saying. Because what happens is that they report, a Afghan general will report, I've got 30,000 people. I've got 30,000 soldiers. In reality, he would have like 10,000. But he reported 30,000, so he get 30,000 paychecks. He will pocket 20,000.
That's just mind-blowing.
On top of that, he would get 30,000 worth of money for chow, for food. And then he would buy crappy food for 10,000, save on that extra 10,000 and keep the other 20,000. Same thing for firewood to keep him warm. He wouldn't even buy it. Was let him freeze. We don't care. Let him freeze.
Terrible.
So this corruption was, and I started doing a lot of research on some of the old reports on the South Vietnam Army, that the all the way from the MACV all the way to 1973, that they're reporting on the Vietnamese and how corrupt it was, and these paper tigers worth of units that in reality were very fragile. And I was like, this is exactly. I was extrapolating this exactly.
Yeah, you were like, history's repeating itself.
Look at this. Look at this. I mean, we're not briefing capabilities. We're briefing numbers. We're briefing KIAs. We're briefing WIAs. Got it. That is.
Why aren't we actually doing our job? Why aren't we doing this analysis on this? And the thing was, and I said this to you in a text message, is the fact that even JFC Brunson and JFC Naples, I kind of just saw them as monkey in the middle, like in my mind, because and here's how I'll explain it. And your ISAF metaphor is really apt, because ISAF knew that really they just have to get to shape, like shape, and shape just has to get to NATO HQ. And all NATO HQ and shape care about is reports. I mean, they don't really, they're not a change agent. They're
Yep.
there to do their meetings, to do their
Yep.
conferences, to make sweeping statements about things. And
Yep.
don't like, and I love the people I worked with, and I had a
Yep.
different experience than you did because I really became friends with some of these people. And I think they're
Mhm.
wonderful people, but they weren't there to change the status quo
No.
or to move mountains or to make NATO better. They
No.
were there because they get a lot of money from all these
Yep.
countries, especially
Yep.
the United States,
Yep.
and they have an image to portray,
Yep.
and they have a look to maintain.
Yep.
And it was like, again, it was like peeling behind the curtain and going, is this really why I'm here?
Yep.
You know?
Yep. And it was considered a 3-year European tour for a lot of the U.S. guys.
Mm-hmm.
A 3-year European vacation.
Right.
That's
And
what it
that's
was.
why people would joke with us. Like before
Yeah.
I went there, I was at UCOM TAD and people were giving me crap about it. They were like, yeah, you're going to go on a European vacation for 3 years. And I didn't want to see it that way. Like
No.
I thought like I'm going to be doing all these international exercises. I'm going to be a part of these major events and the people I got to meet were amazing. But it didn't move the mountains that I thought it was
No.
supposed to do. So you were basically there thinking you were going to do all those things, and then
Correct.
you were met with the reality of what NATO is really about.
Yeah. I was met with resistance and laziness from
Yeah.
U.S. senior officers. So
Right.
then I'm asking
And they're
the
setting the
questions
tone, and they're setting the tone
Yeah.
for the rest of the nations. They are.
and so I'm briefing these events in Afghanistan that the intel section is not briefing. So, and the intel section was led by a U.S. colonel, Air Force, and people start looking at me for intel in Afghanistan, and I'm not an intel guy. I was just at the time the watch officer, eventually became the land operations guy. I was not the intel guy, but now I'm briefing on these events that we need to see. If we're talking about all these great things like ANA, however, the Taliban is gaining control in all these provincial areas. Yes, and the biggest thing is that, well, we still hold in the capitals. No, you're absolutely right. But in a state, in a nation where most of the GDP, if any, comes from the agricultural side, the agricultural areas, the rural areas, is where the power is held.
Right.
The cities are just a token. So this is not like an industrial country where 80% of the GDP is urban based. No, this is 80% of the GDP or even more is urban based. So I was thinking, this is how important it is. Holding the provincial capital doesn't mean jack.
Right. You were basically trying to brief what the problem set was. And during this time, you were pissing off, especially members of the intel department, correct?
Oh, every single one of them. Every single one of them. And eventually I was ordered not to brief on Afghanistan ever again. And they went back to the same monkey show of wounded in action, killed in action, and a good news story. We cut the ribbon on this particular clinic. And
right.
that essentially
we did this, and basically it was, we did this exercise. We did this exercise that we do every single year. Yep. There's zero learning that I saw in a lot of these exercises, to be honest. It was more just, hey, we came together and we sung Kumbaya, and that was great. And now we're going to move on and do the next exercise. And let's get all the publicity we can for these exercises. Let's get all the people together. And by the way, we did so many conferences that I felt like could have been done remotely, but there's this entire culture around doing conferences and going to as many conferences as possible, which feeds into the narrative that it's a European vacation.
Could have been an email.
Yeah.
A lot of these conferences could have been an email.
Yes.
A lot of them. I went to one conference, one training event. It was about a week event, and they had one day off scheduled for a trip to a couple of places. I understand the cultural value of that.
Me too. And I understand the cultural value of networking.
I understand that. Yeah, absolutely. Because you start doing network, you start making friends, whatever. Mm-hmm. I understand that. But I didn't have a problem with that. What I did have a problem was with the out of control drinking events. And I drink beer. I have my wine, but to get drunk to the level that I can't show up to work the following day and not even show up AWOL. I mean, we sent PFCs, privates to jail for that, Lance Corporals to jail for that, but officers can do that. It got to the point that the jock just didn't care. So I went back to be the land operations guy, and I was like, okay, I cannot brief on Afghanistan again because I've been ordered not to brief on Afghanistan ever again. I'm not the watch officer anymore. I was the watch officer just temporarily to fill in anyway. So I'm back to land operations, and I've already been tracking what was happening in Al-Anbar province in Iraq. So when we left in 2011, we left Iraq with a power sharing deal between the Kurds, Shias, and Sunnis. So there were a lot of leadership positions that were mapped to a person from each group, like in Bosnia, to the equal power sharing. And the biggest worry was Maliki, the prime minister at the time, Shia. He was so scared and so paranoid that we're like, the moment we leave, he's going to jail all the Sunnis and the Kurds that are in position of power. And sure as hell, he did. So Al-Anbar province, where Fallujah and Ramadi are, were fought for heavily. A lot of bloodshed, a lot of the nastiest battles in Iraq took place over there. And there was a process of the Al-Anbar awakening in 2007 to 2009, where the Sunni tribes decided, okay, we're not going to side with Al-Qaeda in Iraq anymore. We're going to side with the U.S. because if we side with the U.S., we get rid of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then the U.S. leaves, so then it's just us. If we keep siding with Al-Qaeda in Iraq, we're never going to get rid of Al-Qaeda. Plus, they were doing some pretty bloody stuff that even these Sunni tribesmen leaders were like, okay, this is out of control. So that was the victory in Al-Anbar. While the Marine Corps had a great deal to do with it, it was something that was native. The tribesmen did it. So we essentially were able to leave Al-Anbar in a place of peace. And you could walk in Fallujah, you could walk in Ramadi. I mean, it was safer than Chicago in many instances. So, and when we left, when the Sunnis there saw all their Sunni leadership being thrown into jail, they took it to the streets in peaceful protests. And then Maliki responded by shooting at them. At the time, Al-Qaeda in Iraq was everything but gone. I mean, they were down to like a handful of guys. They were minimized. They were barely a couple of bacteria left. And what that did was that the tribesmen went back to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Were like, hey guys, sorry for switching sides. We need you guys back.
Yeah.
And it fed the ranks of Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Of course.
So I was briefing this all the way through the fall. This happened and this happened. It's going to morph Al-Qaeda in Iraq back again. And I was briefing all the way to the point that they changed franchise and they created their own, the Islamic State. So I was briefing all this stuff. And as I'm briefing, like this was happening, Ramadi has fallen, Fallujah has fallen. It wasn't even in the news yet. I was getting a lot more reports. They were not intel reports. They were classified reports from the open internet. I mean,
you were doing research online.
Blogs and everything. If you have 4, 5, 6, 7 different blogs telling you the same thing, it's worth taking a look at.
Right.
So I was briefing it. I was showing pictures. I was showing these Iraqi reprisals. And I remember saying them telling them, a couple of colonels telling me that those are a bunch of pissed off Arabs that are never going to amount to anything.
Right. You were just being blown off and then told not to brief about it.
And I remember when it came to June, I think it was June, when ISIS took Mosul. When ISIS took Mosul, all of a sudden it hit the news because of a major city in Iraq, I think the second or third largest, have fallen to ISIS. And my brief was, they fallen to ISIS, but taking Mosul is not the biggest thing. The fact that the original intention of ISIS was not to take Mosul, but to liberate their compadres in a Mosul prison. And as they're approaching the Mosul prison, which is in the outskirts of the city, the fact that the entire Iraqi army and police dropped their weapons and fled. Taking Mosul became a target of opportunity. They're like, they handed us the city.
Yeah.
Let's take it. There were so many weapons. I'm talking artillery pieces, tanks, up armor Humvees, plenty of M16s, AK-47s, you name it, RPGs. So many weapons fell in the black market hands and ISIS hands that the price of weapons in Iraq dropped significantly.
Wow.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Crazy.
30,000 personnel worth of weapons fled. And I'm briefing this. Eventually, people start catching on. And it got to the point that I was starting to get a bigger audience. And people started calling it the Marines ISIS brief. And I was getting a lot more people in the job listening. And the intel section was not even briefing a bleep.
And they were threatened.
They were very threatened. They were pissed off. They didn't know where ISIS was. And then, embarrassingly, the general in command, a 4-star, Dom Rose is his name. I want an ISIS brief. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing for the intel section to be asked, I want an ISIS brief for something that's actually happening all over the news. So they assigned it to this kid that I call him Major Gamer in the book, because all he did was play video games. That's all he was interested in. We had to leave our phones outside the building. The first opportunity he would go there to play on, I was like, Angry Birds or whatever it was. He'd be outside playing Angry Birds, and then I have to go to a meeting and pull it up. That's what he did. And I know at home, that's what he did. He played Xbox until 2 a.m, whatever it was. So Major Gamer was assigned, and I was like, this guy cannot even point at Texas in the U.S. map.
Right.
And I knew that. So I approached him. I was like, look, I know a lot about ISIS. I'd like to see the brief. No, we got it. I'm like, that scares me. Let me see it. And so we can agree to it. And he showed me the following day, the brief, the day prior to the briefing. And I'm looking at it, and I showed him all the cells all over Northern Africa, the Middle East. At the time, cells were growing in Afghanistan. The remote reports of ISIS cells growing in Afghanistan, and some cells appearing in Europe. So I told him, what happened to the North African ones? Oh, it doesn't matter. They're not Muslims. I was like,
yeah. So he's basically just blowing you off and not wanting any advice, because it was obviously a threat to his authority or his job. And so he just said, okay, I'm not going to take your help. So then what happens next?
So his brief was incomplete. It was inaccurate. And when I go flip it, I go to this, I'm looking for the center of gravity slide. I'm like, where's your center of gravity? He's like, they don't have one. And anybody that knows a little bit of warfare knows that everything has center of gravity. I mean, a business has a center of gravity.
Everybody,
which
is the biggest vulnerability spot in a problem set. And if you attack that center of gravity, then you basically win the problem set. Yep.
So, and I told him, it's like, not knowing the center of gravity is like a real estate agent not knowing how many bathrooms and bedrooms there are in a house that they're trying to sell.
Right.
Or the zip code or the schools. I mean, this is basic stuff. So it was like, going to the Oriental into super secret squirrel, which I had no access to, websites, and find out, because I'm sure somebody's done a brief on center of gravity. So the following day he pitched it, and it was a mess. The guy, he didn't have a clue. And as they're pitching, I mean, the guys that are there listening, a lot of them have listened to my briefs, which are very much in detail with a lot of information and very completely updated. I had a map, that was a briefing on advances. That's attacks here, this attacks here, this current advances, this current being fought for, this is already taken by ISIS. And they were like, you could hear them going like, Andres, you need to say something. And what is this crap? So all of a sudden, the brief ends. There's no center of gravity slide. And it goes to questions. And I'm like, please don't ask for center of gravity. Please don't ask for center of gravity. Please don't ask for center of gravity. And what does the general ask?
What's the center of gravity?
What's the center of gravity? And then, so this clown didn't have the answer. The leadership of the intel section got up there and it's like, we don't know. And I could see the U.S. general, the one that never showed up to our briefs, kind of sunk in the sea. He was kind of like, and all of a sudden people were looking at me.
I bet. I bet.
Like, Andres, I remember a British officer going like, chap, you need to say something. And I'm like, screw it. I'll jump on that grenade. I rose up, and then I could see the U.S. general and another general going like, pointing at me. I'm like, gentlemen, they do have a center of gravity. It's called popular support. And then the intersection, what? Like, look at me like, how can, they're killing those people. How come they have popular support? And I explained to them in detail, I mean, the Sunnis in Iraq had to turn to something because Maliki is persecuting them. And Al-Qaeda, while being a bad option, is better than Maliki. And
so you basically embarrassed them. And
they embarrassed themselves.
Right. But I'm getting at is that
I opened the door.
This is the beginning. This is what I call sort of, and some of my shows are going to go way over an hour. This is going to be one of them. This is basically the turning point in your story, in my mind, this whole center of gravity issue of where they are like, okay, what can we do to get rid of this guy?
Correct. And then simultaneously, I was also briefing about Ukraine. So in Ukraine, there were the political issues with the European Senate agreement. And one of the things was like, I remember it was November timeframe. It was before the decision. It was early November before the decision, because the president at the time had to decide whether he was going to sign the agreement with the EU or stick to being friends with Putin. And I told him, like, this is not an easy situation. I told him why. It's like, if he says no, he's going to get a revolution. And also at the time, it's like, I told him Sevastopol is on a lease to Russia's Navy. The Black Sea Fleet is stationed in Sevastopol in Crimea, and they have a lease. A pro-Western government is going to get rid of that lease, which is going to force Russia to do something with their guns to maintain that base. I'm like, Ukraine is in a bad, tough position. Whether the leader is pro-Western or pro-Eastern, he's screwed. I'm like, this is a bad position to be in. This is not an easy decision. And got blown off until I remember being January timeframe, December, January timeframe. And I started briefing on some of the advances of some of the activity of the Russian army on Ukraine's borders, which was, they were claiming it was an exercise at the time. And I was like, the amount of personnel and the amount of gadgets that they're moving, this is beyond normal. And also the amount of people that were calling up for the conscripts. I was like, this is beyond normal. So I pitched it, this can be blown off, until Crimea got invaded. And the moment that Crimea got invaded, all of a sudden we see generals showing up at the briefs. Like,
That's
it was
so ridiculous. Ridiculous.
So they had an emergency meeting, and a lot of these high-ranking individuals, they started asking, "Where is Ukraine on the map, and what currency do they have?" And one person said, "I think they use the German mark," which had not been in use since 2002 worldwide.
Right.
So it was pathetic. And shortly after this, we're talking 2014 right now, this spring. Now the generals were in the conference and this getting briefed on a daily basis. And I am taking out the equation because now the intel guys want to take over. And what they're briefing, and all these high-ranking, all these colonels were briefing, is like they were literally sit back on the chair, sir. Russia's going to collapse in a matter of a couple of months. 1991 all over again. They're going to disintegrate. We're going to win this war. We don't even have to shoot anything. And I was sitting in the back, and I talked to this Adam Dorito, and I was like, you don't understand. It's like Russians can take economic decline like nobody can because of culture.
Right. That was part of your book. Yeah,
they've been through rough times. I mean,
they can lose tons of numbers and just keep replenishing because that's their culture to die.
Yeah, it's in France, if you raise the retirement age by 1 day, the entire France goes paralyzed with strikes. In Russia, if you raise it by 10 years or you eliminate all, Russians just keep on going like that because they're built to suffer. Yeah, Russians are built to suffer. That's a big cultural paradigm that you need to take into account.
Sure.
And also, I mean, some stupid things that we had an economic expert, a so-called economic expert in the Intel section, they were arguing, well, the ruble's collapsing, is lowering in value. That means that the economy is collapsing. It's like, not necessarily. And like, there's countries out there that have a stronger currency than the United States does, yet they're in economic trouble.
Yep.
And remember, after September 11th, we devalued our currency for what? To make our exports more attractive.
Yep. So basically,
to recover.
To kind of keep the story onto the tracks. I love the geopolitical stuff, and I know that this is a huge part of it, but I also want to really make sure that we go back to the fact that you were basically sidelined because you were pointing out problems and analysis that they needed to consider, and there was no appetite to do so because they weren't going to be the ones to fix the problem anyway. No. That's really the bottom line of all of this.
They didn't want me around. I was sounding the alarms. I was showing the evidence. They didn't want me around.
They want you around. So then what happens next in terms of this complaint that suddenly happens?
So we had a team-ish of people that we kind of worked together. We had an intel guy in front of me, an air guy that worked, an RFI guy, and next to me was this British officer. She was the naval person, and we worked together, and we're very good friends. At first she was dreadfully shy. After our briefs, we will go grab a coffee, the European thing to do, grab a coffee. But it was like grab a coffee from the little machine right there, not go to a cafe, like grab a coffee from the machine there, sit together. And what went well? What didn't go well? What should we brief next time? Like as we're having a coffee, because that's the way they like to do. And that's fine. You can get a lot of work done that way. Doesn't have to be in front of a whiteboard, everybody shut up, in line. And at the beginning, she didn't want to partake, but I still, I don't want to exclude her, but I'm still going to invite her. And with time, she started warming up, and we became very good friends.
Yep.
Very good friends. I had dinner parties at the house. I invited her along with the rest of my colleagues. We would get together for things. We would go to conferences together. We would grab dinner together. We were very, very, very good friends. Very nice group of work colleagues and friends. I had a family event, a very, very personal family event, and I invited her along with my other colleagues, and they took part of it in their uniforms and everything. When one of my other friends got promoted, we put a little box together of little gifts from our nations to give to him as a presento. So we became very, very tight. And she was desperate to leave the JOC as much as I wanted to move within the command. But she couldn't because I wanted to go to J9, which is military exchange. Well, intermilitary cooperation.
Yeah.
Partnerships, yeah. Exactly. And I had more languages than she did. I had the degree. She did not. And I had a lot more time at the JOC and a lot more time in the command than she did. So I had more seniority. So all of a sudden, there is a complaint, a third-party complaint.
And oh, by the way, before the complaint, you had already tried your best for months to get moved, right? And and the letter, and then you wrote a letter to the Air Force general that was in charge of the U.S. element.
The only
reason you did that was because you saw repeatedly that others were getting moved out of the JOC to other departments at their request who were more junior than you, and you were less time, and you were utilizing the open door policy that people say they have, that if you are not able to resolve a difference with certain people that you were working for, you wanted to highlight that it wasn't fair that all these others who wanted to move and were getting moved were able to do so. And you felt like at this point you're sidelined, like your briefs are not going to go anywhere. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say in the JOC. And you're like, if I go over to partnerships, J9, I might, which works on like international training, like the J9 goes and does training with other nations and other things. So you thought that'd be a better use of your FAO skills. And at that point, when you got the complaint, before you got the complaint, did you hear back from the general, or where was that? Where was the letter?
So the tipping point for my letter was when we went to Poland for an exercise. And in the schedule of the exercise, I saw the last day was Friday, was dedicated for a discussion on what was happening in Ukraine and what's possibly happening in Ukraine and the results and effects. And I was all excited. I'm like, great, we're finally going to talk about this. To find out that Friday morning, after week of seeing a bunch of lieutenant colonels and colonels passed out drunk on their seats by their desks, all of a sudden we were getting to the discussion, and the discussion was being canceled. I was like, what happened? This general, this two-star that you're talking about, and one of his lackeys decided to break out some guitars and play a really bad fifth-grade version of Brown Eyed Girl in front of everybody. No discussion on Ukraine. Ukraine is getting slaughtered, which at the time, which we called it caught us by surprise. And here we are, two clowns, overpaid, playing Brown Eyed Girl in their guitars and casting the discussion. And I was like, this is a clown show. So I wanted to move, and a lot of, in order to get moved, you have to get blessed by the two-star.
Right.
The two-star had to know it. He had to bless it. It didn't have to be a written request. It could be a verbal request, but the two-star had to bless it. And a lot of people were getting moved under his radar, which pissed him off. And I was like, I can do that and then get busted.
Sure.
Or I can do it the proper way. So I initially verbal request. This Marine Lieutenant Colonel blocked it because he was doing his own illegal moves. and without approval. And eventually, I got to the point that all these people are moving around. I'm getting shafted because of my briefs. I'm being told to shut up. Everything I said was going to happen is happening.
Right.
Everything that they said that was going to happen is not happening.
Right.
And I decided I requested a mast.
Yeah, you blew the whistle. You basically blew the whistle.
I whistle blew on the favoritism.
Right.
And the laziness. Yep. And I wrote a letter, which I actually have it on my book.
Yeah. By the way, in his book, at the very end of the book, you have receipts for everything that he's talking about. And I found it to be really helpful because as he was telling the story in the book, you would refer to the appendix and to whatever it was you were talking about. And when I read your book, that's what I would do is I would go straight to the appendix and I'd go, okay. And I'll tell you the truth, like the only thing that caught me off guard was the complaint. When I read, and we'll get to that here in just a second, but when I read the complaint, it was shocking because it didn't jive with anything you had said up to that point, which was why it didn't make any sense to me. But now I'm starting to understand as we're talking, this wasn't the complaint was a retaliation, was a way to weaponize against you for blowing the whistle. If you hadn't sent that letter, I guarantee if you had not sent that letter, you would have never gotten the complaint.
Absolutely not. So I sent the letter, requested mass, and the general had to do something about it. So the general so what I was saying is like, look, I am about to, my report, my evaluation is coming around. My last evaluation was submitted so late, I missed the command board. And the command didn't care.
That's right. So, you were also up for 05. Or no, you're up for command.
I was up for command. I was already selected for 05.
You were already selected for 05, but you were up for command. Yep.
I was up for command. And I had a very competitive package, and they needed to submit my evaluation on time. And they did not.
Yeah.
They submitted 2 weeks late after the board, which meant my package was incomplete. So I got passed over.
Yep. And that was just due to incompetence because your first evaluation was glowing. That was the other thing that was thrown through that just shows you what it was, what is such a bullshit this was, is that your first evaluation from these people were, you can walk on water, you're so great.
Yeah.
And then your second evaluation.
Yeah, I was a top major of all of them. I was even my volunteer work was being highlighted. I was called a humanitarian. I was called, this guy's a top 20%, top 10% of all majors across the board that I've ever seen, not reported on, that I've ever seen. So then I was like, I'm done with this. I'm sick of the favoritism. I'm sick of, if I drink and get drunk with the colonel or drink with the general, then I get to move. I'm like, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not an ass kisser. Never been one.
I hear you. Yep.
I've never been one. Just not my nature. And that's the way I raise my kids. Never ask kiss. Kick ass. Don't ask kiss. And if you see somebody kick him in the face, it's something that really enraged me. So I submitted a complaint, highlighting a bunch of stuff on top of that. I want to move. Oh, by the way, reprisals coming my way because I am writing this letter. So despite complaining to the general, reprisal took place. So they lowered markings on my fitness report. It was still a decent report, but lower markings. Only markings, not really comments.
And I want to just jump in and say, this is what happened. The complaint was originated from somebody who was a low performer, somebody who you knew was not performing to the standard, somebody who, oh, by the way, wanted an in with Intel. And I think eventually went and worked with Intel. He was another member of the jock, member of the jock. So this was somebody who just didn't like you. So this should have been squashed because in a real investigation, it would be borne out that this person had it in for you. But because this is a clown show, they entertained the investigation and said, oh, this person must have said these inappropriate things. Now the witch hunt begins to find other people that will substantiate what this person said. And what this person said was that you said inappropriate things around your British colleague, and you made your British colleague feel uncomfortable by saying inappropriate things.
Right. Sexual content.
Sexual content.
Sexual context. So then as time goes by and I'm like in this tether of what's happening, my fitness report, I couldn't submit a complaint of whistleblower reprisal because that finished report, that lower my markings, had not been submitted yet.
Right. They sat on it. They sat on your fit rep
for months.
For months.
For
so
months.
that you weren't able to say this is a whistleblower issue. Yep. And oh, by the way, during this entire time, they're now questioning witnesses. They're going around and asking all these other people in the JOC, what have you heard? What's going on? And they're picking and choosing. This is my understanding. They're picking and choosing who they interview. They're not interviewing everybody who is working with you.
Or the people, of all the people that sat around me, they only asked 2 folk.
Yeah. And
there were a total of 4 or 5 around me.
Yes, and there were 2 men who said that the same thing happened. We'll go later into your colleague. But the 2 friends who backed each other up, which of course that's what friends do.
The drunks.
Yes. And then at first your British colleague said, I wasn't harassed, right? That was her first initial.
Yep.
There was nothing.
So I didn't know there was an investigation up until I started getting the idea that there was an investigation, kind of framing things. It was end of April when all of a sudden she sends me an email to my personal Yahoo account. And when I checked it, she said the senior intel officer, the Air Force colonel who wanted me out of there, who wanted to shut me up,
right?
Because I'm embarrassing him with my work.
Sure.
She's like, he was over here asking strange questions about you. And she sent me an email. And the funny thing is that she was at the same building where I was. And for some reason, I think she was in a workshop, in a work group, whatever it was. And she had to send me that email. Like, she couldn't wait until she saw me a couple of hours later. She really needed to tell me right now. She sent me to my personal account, my private account. And I was like, what? So then I saw her, and then she tells me, let's go outside. And she tells me, it's like, look, Colonel Carey's asking these questions about, you saying sexual things in front of me and doing this and doing that, make you feel uncomfortable, blah, blah. Everything revolves about, you taking off, not coming to work, blah, 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 blah.
You leaving early, you falling asleep
leaving early,
desk.
not coming to work, taking off for sexual encounters with random people out in town, making inappropriate comments in front of her, apparently inappropriate sexual stories in front of her, just sexual, and not coming to work. And I was like, okay. I asked her, it's like, okay, I think you know the answer on the not coming to work. I'm always here. She's like, yeah. I was like, the only time I leave the JOC is to go to the gym, which is still in the base, across the street from the building, still within the same base. And I'm here sometimes on weekends. And she's like, yeah, you're here before everybody comes in. Because I used to come in very early, around 7 in the morning, because NATO time for him to start is 8:15. I used to come at 7:30 in the morning, or 7 in the morning, because a lot of the international officers wanted to practice their briefs with me because of pronunciation or intonation or whatever. So she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And that's the whole thing of NATO. It's like, if you are from a nation, you can give a helping hand to another partner. That's how you build an alliance. So I was like, I'm here before everybody and I leave after everybody. So, I don't know where this is coming from. And then I asked her, I was like, I don't remember everything I've said, but have I at any moment said anything that made you feel uncomfortable or could potentially have made you feel uncomfortable, whether it made you uncomfortable or not? She's like, no, you never have. I'm like, right. Have I said any sexual stories, sexual context, or any of this stuff in front of you or to you or across from you? She's like, no. I'm like, okay, case closed, but I'm gathering. She's like, yeah, that's kind of odd. And then I get a phone call from one of these friends. So he got a hold of us. There's a couple of days later, we were walking, and he's like, hey, I need you to call me home. I was like, okay. Well, I got something to tell you. I'm like, we can just go outside or just talk right here. He's like, no, I need you to call me. Okay. So when I got home, I called him. There was no answer. Hung up. My phone record shows like I think 1 or 2 seconds because it went into his answering machine. And then the following day, he I believe it was the following day, he tells me that he was asked by the JOC director now, like just this Air Force colonel, now this Army colonel, about if I am leaving from work during the day to engage in sexual activities and then coming back and bragging about them. And I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? He's like, please don't tell him. I didn't hear this from me. I was like, no problem.
Wow. And this is one of the two that were vouching for each other, right?
Yeah.
So he was basically breaking his brotherly bond to at least tell you something's going on.
Correct. Well, the funny thing is that he asked me to call him because as I gathered the evidence later on, I found out that before he talked to me, asked me to call him, he had said in the investigation that I called him 5 times.
I saw that.
And on the 5th time, we had an extended conversation. So having said that story, now he needed to put it somewhere in the record that I called him 5 times. So he was hoping that I would call him 5 times, and I didn't.
Right. Well, and also he was basically playing both sides. He knew he's playing both sides because he knew that you were honest and he wanted to give you a heads up, just like the British lady did. But at the same time, they were being pulled into something that was bigger than they were. And they felt to save their own asses. They had to do what they had to do to comply with this witch hunt investigation.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like this particular guy, he received a DUI. So in terms of standing in the command, he was at the bottom.
Right. So he had to do whatever he could do to just preserve his reputation. To rebuild his reputation. And to rebuild his reputation. So if he cooperated with this investigation and backed his buddy up with what his buddy was saying went on, which were these inappropriate conversations, then he could raise his profile.
And one of the things is that, this is a guy, I don't know how many times I had to pick him up from because he lived relatively close from me. He's still out of the way, but pick him up from his house to take him to work and then take him back because he had lost his driving privileges.
His driving
privileges. He lost his license. Yeah. He lost his license. So because of DUI or DWI, one of them. Then it came to light that the person who actually started this investigation, this complaint, the actual main complaint, was the guy who sat in front of me, and he was the intel briefer. And the intel briefer was desperate to get out of the JOC. Because my briefs were also embarrassing him. And this guy also had a problem with alcohol and showing up to work. Another clown.
This story is just so ridiculous.
It's
such a mess. And I'm going to try my best to just kind of keep it on because we could talk about this for 5 hours. So what I'm going to try to do now is move on to this investigation's playing out. What turned the British colleague?
So I didn't hear anything for several weeks. Most of the investigation took place in 2 weeks. It was like 4 or 5 weeks. And I haven't heard anything. And I was like, they're probably asking questions and people are telling the truth. And all of a sudden, when I get interviewed, I had nothing to hide. And as they're going through the questions, one of the things I have you ever left, the judge's like, and I told him, sir, I'm sure you can go to the security office and you can pull on my logs. You can see that I'm here probably before you and I'm here probably after you. And all of you, gentlemen, all of you, because there were 3 colonels trying to intimidate me. And he said, no, that's fine. And every time I suggested, I've got this piece of evidence, because one of the accusations was that I was reading off sexual stories from a particular book that had short stories. I'm like, sir, that book doesn't have a single sexual story. It's called Shit My Dad Says, which is a funny book about a relationship between a son and his dad. There's no sexual stories there. Right. So I was like, I got a copy at home and I had it in my office because I was going to give it to somebody. Somebody asked me for a copy and I just read a couple of stories. You can read through it. There's nothing sexual about it. They're funny stories between dad and son. So no, that's fine. Everything was like, no, that's fine. So it got to the point that, I was like, you know what? I went to the security guys and I pulled, hey, could you pull my entry and exit logs for this particular time for like,
because you're now having to do your own evidence gathering because at this point that chances are you are being targeted unfairly and this is just a dog and pony show and this is going to be a clown game. So you say, okay, I'm going to pull my logs. Now I've got proof that at least on this charge for now. Okay. And what happens?
So I hold the logs and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and hand it to the investigator. sir, this particular accusation,
Right, because this is something that you can easily prove, and you thought, and I bet you thought too, like this will make this whole thing go away because this is one particular aspect of the investigation that's just baseless. And
yeah,
and here's the thing, this pulls at the credibility of the accuser because
correct.
if he's lying about this,
Yeah.
then what else is he lying about?
Correct. And I
Right.
I also expected that if Michelle was asked these questions, she'd be like, no, that's never happened.
Right.
My female colleague. So then I presented these logs. I couldn't get a hold of him. I left it to one of his officers, junior officers, and then I walked back. And I remember that was on a Friday, and that was the Friday of Memorial Day weekend of 2015. And I got home and I get this angry phone call from the senior Marine in Brussels, who was the one sitting on my fitness report for the longest time.
And that's SHAPE, by the way.
And
that,
in SHAPE, sorry. In SHAPE, Supreme,
which is the higher headquarters for all NATO for the military side. Right. Yep.
So, and he lost it, and he starts screaming over the phone, order me not to gather evidence on my behalf.
I'm getting so mad.
Which is illegal. And also, I was like, sir, I would like a copy of the investigation. It's like, you will never get a copy of the investigation. I'll never give it to you. And luckily, I have that conversation witnessed.
Yeah.
And I got it in writing. That conversation was witnessed.
And you still didn't get a copy of your freaking investigation until I think hours before your board of inquiry.
I was before the NJP.
Before the NJP. This whole system just pisses me off.
Comes the Memorial Day weekend passes, and I believe it was the Wednesday or the Tuesday. I'm not very sure when it was. Come back to work. I get pulled in. So I'm sitting. I go back to my seat. My female partner, colleague is sitting next to me, and I see her like incredibly nervous. And she's like touching me on the shoulder. Are you okay? Is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, I hope so. But I noticed her like she had just seen a ghost. And then she gets yanked, disappears. I remember on the Friday, like she was gone for several hours. Shortly after, I handed in my evidence early in the morning on the Friday, and all of a sudden she had like disappeared for several hours. I remember that because we had to do work together. So where the hell did she go? We had to finish a couple of things. So because we had to build the brief or the majority of it, so we could enjoy the weekend and not have to work for the weekend. I just add in new information that comes in over the weekend.
Right.
So she was not around. And then that particular day, Tuesday or Wednesday morning, whatever day it was, because we had the long weekend, she was like nervous, like she had just seen a ghost. Like she had just murdered somebody and she was trying to get rid of the body.
So sad.
And then she was like completely shaken. And I was like, are you okay? She's like, I think so. And like shaking and really sad. It looked like she'd been crying. So anyway, so that afternoon I get called over to the JOC director's office, and they're like, your clearance has been suspended. You're being escorted out of the JOC. And they grabbed me by the arm and they took me outside of the building. They forcibly extracted me outside the building. I couldn't even grab my gear.
Wow.
My personal stuff. Even a lot of the evidence that I had was secret. So I was hoping to be able to pass it to another secret drive so I could hold it. And then if I had to go somewhere, hey, I got evidence, but it's secret. No, obviously not printing and walk it out with me. Which was a problem in the JOC because we had several people that were transferring files and sending them on the regular Yahoo email. Oh yeah, and nothing happened to those guys. So, and then I discovered the investigation. The reason in the entry on the JPAS, which is the joint whatever intel system that gives you the clearances, says that clearance has been suspended because he's under investigation. That was the 28th of May. But the investigation finished on the 27th, the day before. So that was a big red flag. And then the 28th is when all of a sudden I'm in my new desk in a building. It's a base logistics building. And then my former boss and some of the other guys were like, dude, I heard the investigation's over. Have you heard anything? I'm like, I haven't heard anything. But who told you the investigation's over? He's like, the JOC director. I'm like, that's odd. When did it finish? Yesterday. I'm like, that's odd because apparently I got my clearance suspended because of ongoing investigation. this doesn't make any sense. And one of them told me, it's like that my female colleague, days later, was brought into an office that had a lot of windows that was in the jock, and they had given her a stack of papers, and she was there just like if you don't read them, and just signing them. And
So
there were a couple of senior officers around her, sign them.
So your thoughts are that she was basically coerced into that's what you're alleging, is that she was coerced into making statements against her will, because what they could do is they could threaten her career, correct?
Right.
If she didn't stand up and say, no, this didn't happen. He didn't make me uncomfortable.
Right.
He didn't speak about any of these things.
Right.
So she was put in a position to say, okay, I'm going to have to sign these statements.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. And then so I'm not getting the investigation. All I'm getting is word bits and pieces over here, because if I had the investigation, I could see the statements. So, but enough people are telling me the same thing. So I contacted Michelle. The investigation's over. I can contact her, and I was like, "Can I invite you for a coffee?"
Right.
On base, by the little NATO PX.
Yep.
Where it's completely open. It's not a closed room. It's in front of everybody. There's cameras all over the place. So we sat down, and I told her. She's like, "Have you heard anything?" I'm like, "No, not officially, but I have heard that there's allegations that I allegedly have sexually harassed you." And then she was like looking away, and I'm like, I told her, I remember the first thing I told her was like, look, if at any moment, if I ever said anything that insulted you, harassed you, sexual nature, non-sexual nature, I just want to tell you that I apologize. I couldn't even finish that sentence when she said, "You never have." She's like, "You never did." I'm like, okay. I was like, that's what I thought. I'm like, however, I believe there's stuff written out there
that says differently, and you're asking her,
or by someone's,
yes, saying that she did feel uncomfortable and felt sexually harassed. So you basically say, make a statement, please.
Like, could you put what you just said?
Yeah,
in writing,
because you want this to go away, and you want this to finally be done. And what does she say?
I want the right to be done.
Right.
I'm like,
somebody's wrong. Mm-hmm.
Somebody's saying this.
Right.
And she looked away. She's like, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm like, Michelle, do you understand the impact of this?
Like, do you know what this is going to do to me?
I'm like, do you know what you not standing up for the truth it's going to result in? And she's like, I just can't. And she got up and said, I have to go. Good luck. I'm sorry.
That's so sad.
And she walked away. Then so I am still fighting at this moment for a copy of the investigation. And, they give me the intent to impose Article 15, non-judicial punishment. And I'm like, I'm not saying anything. I want a copy of the investigation. I'm not saying. They come in with every excuse, and the clock is ticking because you get 10 days to make a decision, court-martial, NJP. And I'm like, I want to sign anything. And then all of a sudden I get this senior Navy officer so the Navy got really involved in this because they were under the impression that I was making an illegal investigation on their weight control program, on the physical fitness program. During the time frame that I was there, I was getting word. A couple of sailors were complaining to me that there were some senior guys that were falsifying their records.
Their height and weight standards.
Their height and weight standards.
Pass their PRT, their physical fitness test.
And physical fitness scores. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is not my business. I don't fall under you guys. This is what I would do. Gather evidence, make a complaint. There's channels for this. End of story. Don't get me involved. In fact, I reported this conversation. No, I didn't mention names, but I reported to this particular senior Marine, the one at shape, the colonel, who eventually turned against me. I told him, sir, I'm hearing this. We need to stay away from the Navy element because there's some funky stuff going on. And I had that conversation actually witnessed. That I was actually mentioning that I was being approached. Because in the colonel, in a statement, he said that I was saying that I was making an illegal investigation on my own. But luckily, the conversation, the way it actually happened, I got a witness, and I got a statement from a person that witnessed it, and it's in the book. So the Navy's really getting involved because they're afraid that they're going to get busted.
Everyone just wants to cover their butt. That's all this is about.
Literally cover the butt, especially Navy guys. So I am so then this particular Navy commander walks in. He's like, I need to talk to you. It's like, yes, sir. Took me to the back room, and he's like, and at this, up until these days, I started hearing that the senior Navy officer, a female, who was also out of physical standards, heavily out of physical standards, was starting going around saying that I had threatened her, and she feared for her safety.
And I want to back up and say why she would be motivated to do this, because this is also part of the story. Because people are going to hear this and go, well, where did she come from? Why is she now saying something that's bad about you too? This is also because you were a threat to her authority as a Marine who did not want to fall under the Navy element. And she knew that having the Marines under her purview, was something that would make her career look more polished on paper. And so because you didn't think that your Marines should have to do all the same things that the Navy was doing, because you had instructions that said, and this is all in the book, you had certain things, certain policies, like certain procedures. I mean, if anyone knows anything about the military, they know that there's a ton of GMT and all these admin requirements. And you were basically pushing back on these admin requirements to her, saying, no, ma'am, this is not what we Marines do. So she was already in her mind conditioned and biased against you, because she was like, this Marine just wants to do whatever the heck he wants. And I don't have any control of him. And so she, in my mind, she kind of piled on. She was a pile on. She piled on.
And the thing is that she believed, she was fully convinced that the Marines fell under her.
Right. So she felt like you usurped her authority.
But
and
we did not.
Right.
We had our own element. We had our own chain of command.
And I believe in her mind, she did feel threatened. That's the thing that people don't talk about either, is the fact that people believe what they tell themselves. And I think in her mind, she was mentally threatened, but she transposed that to a physical threat and said, I'm scared about what he's going to do.
So she started saying that I physically and verbally threatened her. And that's what I was hearing. Right. And they had colonels and lieutenant colonels approach me, and I was like, sir, it's like, I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing that's what she said, and nobody believes her shit. I'm like, okay, because I mean, this person was very emotionally unstable. And in fact, I wanted to stay away from her as much as I could. And in fact, at the board of inquiry, she actually stated that our contact was to the bare minimum, if that. Because I wanted to keep my distance away from her. You know, some people you want to keep your distance away from her. That was
sure. You just knew she was somebody you just didn't want to have that many interaction with.
I was like, no. Social media, I'm like, I hardly ever kept any professional contacts even on social media. I'm not the kind of guy that has an entire platoon on social media now. So I wanted to stay away, away from her. And she was also there were a handful of people at the senior level that if there was an investigation on the fraudulent entries in the physical fitness program, they will pop. And she'll be one of them. Anyway, so then she starts saying that. And, when you start making accusations, when you start being accused of physically or verbally threatening somebody, that lands you in jail. That is one of the reasons why they put people in pretrial confinement. When you become a physical threat to somebody, when you threat of physical harm to somebody, it's a very easy way to land up in jail. Either that or a flight risk. So, and that's when I was getting really scared, because where's this coming from? I keep hearing this. I haven't heard it from her directly. Once again, I'm trying to stay away from her. But then this particular commander walks in, pulls me to the side, and he's like, if you don't take NJP right now, and you don't send off this form today, and you don't plead guilty, those allegations of verbal harm and physical harm and all that are going to result in you being imprisoned.
It's just disgusting. By the way, just for the audience and for your purposes, I lost my camera. I'm working on getting my backup camera, so it's just going to be on you right now for full screen, but I know you can still hear me. So Go ahead.
And at that point, I had a lawyer, but my lawyer was very lackadaisical. 6 hours, time difference. He wasn't too interested in me getting the covered investigation. I attempted to reach other lawyers. They were either too busy or no, I don't deal with this or whatever it is. I was like, oh no, you need to find a local lawyer. I can't find a local lawyer. Local Dutch lawyers don't do UCMJ. So it with that piling on and knowing that, look, if I take a court martial, I'm not going to be able to get any evidence. The people that will be able to tell the truth are under duress. Looks like the person that allegedly sexually harasses is refusing to change her statement or clarify anything. If I ended up in jail, I would have been. I have a European family, and at the time I had a house in Spain. I would lose all that or any access to come back or even travel,
right?
Or to enter other countries. I'm like, I'm done. So I knew of some cases at the time of some NJP people that have been NJPs that were able to then they pleaded guilty to the NJP, but eventually were able to gather information, enough evidence to say, this is an injustice. And a reasonable commander was able to overturn it. I've seen it. I was actually one of them, commanders that overturned one NJP. I didn't impose it. The guy prior to me, and I found out that it was not her fault. It was her husband's fault, but it fell on her, and she had to be blamed to try to protect her husband. Anyway, and I've seen it in many other cases. So it just to keep my butt from landing in jail unjustifiably, pretrial confinement, I plead guilty. So
this just pisses me off so much because basically you just didn't have time to prepare a defense. You didn't get the investigation in a proper amount of time. You didn't have lawyers that were proactive in advising you. You tried to gather your own investigation and you tried to get your own evidence to prove your case, and you were blocked at every turn. So
I was punished for it.
Yeah. And the morning of your NJP, that's when they decide to give you your investigation. That is just so ridiculous and so wrong and such a violation of your due process protections.
Yeah. In fact, I reported several times that I had not received this, and it's in the evidence of the book, and it got to the time, even my lawyer asked, and the morning that I took off to drive to Germany for the NJP proceedings, she replied, the JAG replied, oh, he didn't get a copy? I'll let him see when he comes in. So that was an acknowledgement. Ridiculous. That's an acknowledgement that of violation of procedure. She should have stopped proceedings right there and go like, here's a copy. You got another 10 days.
Right.
But of course it didn't happen. So I made some pretty strong statements during the NJP proceedings. I thought, I have not sexually harassed anybody. I haven't seen the investigation. And that was supposed to be recorded and transcribed to the report of NJP, but it did not. All it said was guilty, proceedings ending, and that's it. So, and that there's there were two witnesses. I don't know their names. I don't remember their names, but I would love to get a hold of those guys because they will be able to tell that of the statements that I made regarding the whole procedure. So then I get forced transfer to Norfolk, Virginia, to Marine Forces Command, where I have to stand in front of a board of inquiry. And that's when
this is also where things start looking up again. I'm going to just break in real quick because this is when you finally start to work for leaders again. That's what I love about this part of the story is that this is the first time since you've been deployed and you had your own unit with 150 people that you have a taste of what leadership really is about once again, right?
Yeah. So I ended up working for a civilian guy, a GS-14, I believe it is. And he was a civilian guy, more for logistics guy. And then, but the ultimate boss was a older colonel, Matthew Travis. Great person, as straight as an arrow as it gets. And when I checked in, I ended up in the G4 where they were working. I met Mr. Lane is the name of the civilian guy, and he's like, "Look, I understand you're facing a BOI. Your priority in life from now until the BOI is to get ready for the BOI and hopefully pass it." Got it. And then he took me to see Colonel Travis. Colonel Travis asked me to sit down. And he was very blunt with me. He told me, I don't want you here. When I heard you were coming, I told him I didn't want you.
I love that kind of honesty.
He's like, I don't want people like you.
Right.
And I was like, maybe what can I say? That I can tell him I'm innocent, but I don't have anything to prove. So and then he tells me directly, it's like, I don't want to hear any bullshit from you. I don't want to hear any bad behavior from you. I'm like, if not, the hammer will drop.
Mm-hmm.
And most people would take that as a legitimate, well, as a lawful threat within the bounds of the law. He's not threatening me with killing me or anything. The hammer drop is very figurative. So obviously he's not threatening with a hammer.
I think honestly, he was just saying where you stood with him. And I think that you are the kind of person that respects that. I
did. And that for me, it was a blessing. Most people would fear that. For me, it was a blessing. This is the kind of guy who's going to see things for what they are.
Right.
And it's like, all it's going to take me is time and being who I am.
Yep.
So this was going to take time and being who I am. So I met my defense counsel, my defense counsel, and he was irate. The fact when I showed him evidence that they never gave me the investigation, they blocked my every single effort. And my previous command had violated every single inch of procedure. So he then told me, it's like, okay, look, we have to defend the BOI. Do you have any evidence? And I was like, I don't have a whole lot. So because the people that want to talk, the should talk, cannot talk. And he got to the point that when he's reading through the statements, particularly these two, the two buddies who stated against me, he asked me, he told me, you did this, apparently you did this. I was like, no, I did not this. And he asked me directly, he's like, why would they lie?
Sure.
And I was like, I only have my word with me. Yeah. So it got to the morning of the BOI, where all of a sudden I've been speaking to a couple of my friends before, but they did not want to make any statements because.
And by the way, you were only relying on military defense attorneys, right? You didn't hire civilian counsel, which you shouldn't have to do, by the way. You should not have to shell out tens of thousands of dollars. I mean. Yep. Bradley Geary is a great example. I think that guy's probably spent, and I have no idea what the real amount is, but I'm going to guess he spent upwards of $100,000 on his defense. And that is sad because his case was so high profile and it was such a travesty of justice. But that's what they want to do. They want to bleed you dry financially so that you can fight your case. And you weren't going to do that. But the problem is that you got an overworked defense attorney who doesn't even sound like they believed you.
Well, this particular guy, he was a new guy. And he was doing a good job, but he didn't believe me, and rightfully so. I didn't blame him for that. So it got to the point that it was like the morning of the BOI. Well, he was telling me, said, "Look, you got to fall on your sword. You got to take the blame." I was like, "I didn't do any of this."
Yeah, like how are you going to take the blame for something that you didn't do?
And he's like, this is just the way it works. And I was having a hard time with that. And anyway, so it was. I had been speaking to a couple of buddies of mine, and they mentioned a couple of things. That when I started matching things together, according to what they were saying, one of these guys who witnessed it, according to the time that the other one said it happened, this particular person that allegedly witnessed it wasn't at work. And I was like,
I remember that. Yep.
I have to get the logs because if in order for he to witness, he should have witnessed it before 8:15 or 8 in the morning, or between 7:30 and 8 in the morning. And I was like, hold on a second. So I called my security office buddies, and it was the morning I spent the situation. It's like, look, I need logs on this person. I mean, the chance that they're going to give it to me were probably 0 to none. But I tell them my story, and they're like, look, you know what? I'm putting my neck on the line, but
that's great that they did.
I will send you an email with information. Yeah. How about that?
Yeah,
and you can use my name.
I remember this.
And
it's in the book.
And it's in the book, and I went through this particular time, and it showed that this guy had not swept his badge until about 8:15. And this other guy was saying that he witnessed it and it happened around 8 in the morning.
Yeah. And I mean, that can be explained away as somebody saying they didn't get the times right. But it was just another example, once again, of things not being as they seem. And by the way, at this point, I know that you also got a phone call from the 06 Navy captain to your old boss. Had that happened yet? Where basically she said, Okay.
Not yet. So that was after the BOI. So all of a sudden, then I'm starting mapping things out, and I started showing, and the 8:15 part is because at 8:15 the brief's closed.
Right.
Before 8:15 is brief prep. So apparently this happened during brief prep when I apparently started busting out some sexual banter, But this guy couldn't come into work. It proved that he wasn't in work until 8:20, late for the brief already ongoing.
Yeah.
So I get that a couple of pieces of information. And in that morning, I called my defense counsel, who had already traveled from Quantico down to Norfolk. And I told him, remember that conversation? Yeah. I got a piece of evidence that shows that he wasn't even at work. And he's like, really? He's like, yep. And that's when he began to believe me. So then
that's the turning point. Okay.
So that's when his defense was like, okay, we have to prove him wrong.
We're going to fight this because he saw you were able to do your own investigation.
Correct. But
get the information finally.
Correct. But my issue was that, a lot of my evidence have been ripped apart from me. And also a lot of the guys who were able to tell the truth and tell otherwise were scared to write anything.
Yep. And that's typical in these investigations. Yep.
So all of a sudden then we go to the BOI, and they call the lieutenant colonel Marine lieutenant colonel who didn't want me there in the first place, and who I busted for lying to the general, and lying to two different generals. And then they called also the Navy captain, the female Navy captain. So they put him to speak to me. Everything was telephonic. They swore under oath they were going to tell the truth. And I got it in the book, I think 5-6 different counts of perjury that the Marine colonel said, accused me everything from I would park my car on an illegal spot and violating ATFP, anti-terrorism force protection procedures, and parking on reserved spaces. Funny thing is that I used to ride my bike to work.
Yeah.
I've been riding my bike to work since 2010. I'm sorry. Riding my bike to work.
What makes me so mad about this is that they know they can get away with lying too. They know that they can say whatever they want, even in an official board of inquiry. Yep. And isn't it like anyone's going to go back and accuse them of false official statement or perjury. Do an investigation perjury, and do an investigation on the fact that they committed perjury? But okay, so
which is jail time. Perjury is jail time.
Yeah,
perjury is jail time. So he also accused me of getting a lease on my own and not clearing it through housing office. So violating procedure. That I just got a lease on my own, and I screw the housing office, which is it's a big no-no, because if you live overseas, wherever you live has to be cleared by the housing office.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
He also accused me that I fabricated that I spoke all these languages, and that I fabricated that I was a foreign air officer of 3 different regions, and they never showed him evidence. In fact, during his statement, he also contradicted himself by saying, "Yeah, I remember when he showed me all his certifications and exams passed, and showing that he didn't have these regions." So he contradicted himself several times. And during the break, he also, when he was asked where, you were his evaluator, his reporting senior, you wrote his evaluation, where does he position in comparison to all the Marines of his rank that you have written? And he said, I was the second from the bottom of a total of, I believe, 6 majors. I was second from the bottom. And I was only second from the bottom because one underneath me, allegedly, he got fired in Iraq and sent back. So the BOI had my finish reports. That particular evaluation that he wrote, that he signed, glorifying me, not only markings, but also in verbal, saying the top of all majors ever written for, right? They had it right there. So the senior member of the board, a colonel, Russell, his name, attacked him, saying, have you looked at your profile? Have you even looked at it? Oh, well, and then he says, oh, I was forced, but, I dinked him on the comments. He said the comments here say that he stopped 20%, promote for command. And I mean, all these great, and then he started just dancing around it. Oh, that's a standard that I always write at, whatever. It was obvious that he got caught in a lie, and he was lying to the senior member of the board. Senior member of the board had the duty to stop proceedings right there, because he has the duty to, and the duty to rule on all evidence and all proceedings, or at least make a statement or write something that this guy committed perjury. Nothing.
Of course not.
Then came the Navy captain, and the Navy captain, that's when she accused me in the board that I made her feel for her safety. So when you when a female senior says that to 3 senior conservative persons, Marine officers, of a Judeo-Christian background, that's never good news. The mood turned very dark. And there was nothing I could say against, because the accusation was not in the investigation. It was new, and it completely caught me off guard. And from what I understand, the member of the board, who later on I showed him a ton of evidence, he said that took a lot of that was a lot of weight in the decision to kick me out of the Marine Corps.
I'm so upset about this for you. You should have never been kicked out, because what the audience doesn't know, and I'll try to get to, I'm so sorry, guys, that this is going on for as long as it does. Normally I have an hour-long show, but there was no way I was going to be able to tell this story properly and really hear out all the ins and outs without us going a little bit over or a lot over. But the point being is that not only did they vote to separate you from the Marine Corps, later on, she retracted her statement, the S.O.S.
Yep, she retracted
to your
her statement.
boss.
Yeah, so after the board, I went to my boss, my civilian boss, Mr. Lance, like, sir, I was accused of this. And in this office here in G4, there's a lot of females, lower ranking and seniors, whatever. And I think that's something that the colonel needs to know. I want to be completely transparent. And we went to him. I'm like, sir, this is what I was accused of. You know,
Sure.
If you ask me, I'll tell you it didn't happen, but I have every reason to lie. So, and he's like, are you going to be a threat here? I was like, sir, I'm not. But once again, I have every reason to lie. So what I'm asking you, sir, is to please call this Navy captain and ask her. And at that moment, he was like, okay. So he called her and she confessed.
Why? Why do you think
verbally,
she did that? Like, that part is so fascinating to me, is the fact that she retracted it. How did she explain at the time the reason that she lied at the BOI?
So she had retracted, because one of the things that the BOI said, that she accused me of mutiny and that I refused to fall under her charge because I was one of her Marines.
Sure.
And then the day or 2 days after, she started trying to clean up, like, she was obviously scared that she could probably be charged with perjury. And she sent an email saying, oh, well, there was this one document that says that they don't belong to me. So maybe this is the reason why he didn't want to, fall under my command. Hello, we have a different chain of command. It was written on paper. So then she started backtracking her statement.
She started walking it back. I can't remember what appendix that was, but that was fascinating when I read that in here, about how she basically went from saying, yeah, she was threatened, to, I never thought he should get out of the military. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane that she would backtrack like this. And
then she talked to my colonel, and then she sent email. She's like, let me clarify. No, he's not a threat. He never threatened me. And then my colonel wrote a letter saying, I had this conversation.
Right.
And her statement is dubious at best. So she backtracked me, which then, for her to make an accusation so blasé in a BOI, it really brings me to question, has he done this to somebody before?
Right. Absolutely. Like, she knows that this works. And that's the part that just is so disturbing about this entire thing, is that obviously these people know that this is the silver bullet. If you want to ruin somebody, all you have to do is say that they sexually harassed you, or that you felt threatened by them. And
this is where Hegseth talks about the repeated complainers.
Right. And the thing
is, the weaponized system.
There's people that really need justice, and then there's people that are weaponizing the system. And both things can be true at the same time. Correct. And unfortunately, we're trying to pit one against the other, which is absolutely not what the issue is. So they vote to separate you, and then you have a whole nother saga with how soon they want to get you out. And basically they're trying to rush you out without being able to do all the proper medical checks to make sure that you have all the proper documentation for claiming all of your injuries.
So being a TBI, two TBIs, and having a PTSD, the Marine Corps order says very clearly I have to go through this particular extra medical steps. They refused to submit me to that, and I fought that. When my package went all the way to the Secretary of the Navy, my lawyer contacted the Secretary of the Navy saying this is illegal, and they kicked it back twice.
Yep, and they actually did delay your separation,
and they gave me a stay, and they gave me a stay.
So that you could complete all of your proper medical procedures to ensure that you were properly taken care of before you got out, but not before they fabricated PTSD. And this is what people don't understand too about the medical system. If you say someone has adjustment disorder, or you use some other term, personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, you don't get the same benefits or the same VA claim as somebody who has PTSD. And if you're diagnosed with PTSD, as I was as well when I was in London, you can't just decide later that it's now adjustment disorder or it's now something else. I had to do the same thing as I was separating. I saw that my doctors here in Mississippi tried to say I had adjustment disorder. And I'm like, no, I've been diagnosed with PTSD. With anxiety. And I feel I have PTSD. And I am going to separate from the Navy with PTSD. And I'm also very aware of why other people want to say adjustment disorder or borderline personality disorder or all these other diagnoses. And that's exactly what they did to you.
Yep. So I had PTSD diagnosis. And then when I shared this with a friend of mine, he's like, do you have it in writing? I'm like, well, it's in my record. He's like,
and you don't even think about it. You're like, of course I have it in writing. The lady said I had PTSD. Yeah.
He's like, he's like, I have it in writing. He's like, get a written copy. I was like, well, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm sure. It's like, no, get a written copy right now. And I was like, why? It's like this command is known for altering records. I was like, what? That's illegal.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy to think that can happen.
He was like, leave this you and I right now and go get a copy. I was like, okay. So that's exactly what I did. And I got a copy to find out that they changed my diagnosis to reaction to severe stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is a lesser form diagnosis that will be rated differently by the the Department of Veterans Affairs, and they know this.
But not only that, but then it doesn't require me to go through this extensive medical checkup that they didn't want to do.
Yeah, right.
So and then apparently it's on a particular day. It was I was diagnosed with reaction to severe stress or downgraded from PTSD to reaction to severe stress on a particular day. It was 26 September. And nowhere in my records does show that I had a 26 September appointment. Because if you print out your logs of
this is so
all your
similar to what happened
appointments,
to Adam Dorito. Mm-hmm.
all your appointments, I can show. I never had an appointment this day. I was at work.
That's why I wanted you to connect with Adam, because this is exactly what happened to him.
So then they actually turned the gears for a medical examination. They submit a battery test and all this other stuff. And then these other naval doctors like, this guy, he does have PTSD, and they actually wrote it. Right. So I have even more in the documentation showing that this guy.
So you fixed it. So you were able to fix it.
So they're fixing that, and the command is getting irate. So then we're going to submit the battery test, and then they show that because I had TBI and PTSD at the same time, they're like, look, we need to reduce your anxiety levels, so then we can figure out your TBI, and then hopefully treat both. But we need to reduce your anxiety levels. So. I was like, that's fine. And they told me, it's like, look, we're going to start come the fall of 2017 because we're not going to start right now. Summer break, everybody's going to be gone to the winds. You're probably going to take vacation. So we're going to start treatment, and then we're going to revamp you for another, battery test come the spring of 2018. So I'm like, great. So anyway, at this point, I am 19 years in service. So this will take me closer to 20, my retirement. And then all of a sudden, that particular May of 2017, 19 years of service, I am cycling to work, and I get in an accident. So this guy hit me. I was on the sidewalk. He came out, no looking. He was on his phone, hit me. That's where I got my second TBI. So I was down for the count. I got diagnosed with a secondary TBI. I am down for the count for several days. And the command knew that the clock would have to start again. because they didn't do the proper checks prior to.
They tried to separate, but you were already safe for the 20 years, right? Like, because I think you have to only do like 17 years to get the 20 year.
Nope. They can separate you before the 20 years. Yeah, they can.
Right, but I know they can. But were you already in, like, I don't even know if you want to call it the golden parachute or whatever you want.
I was at 19. I was at 19 years at that point.
You were not at 19.
I was.
Oh,
I was at 19.
Okay. So you were able. Okay.
I was at 19 years. So then all of a sudden, I am recovering from being hit in the head by a vehicle and then the road.
Yeah.
And then right behind my back, a 3-star general wrote that a couple of days before the accident, there was a full check, and a bunch of psychologists or a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever it was, wrote off that my PTSD and TBI is fine and had nothing to do with accusations or whatever. Events that never happened, because they had to have that particular check before my accident, because any kind of evaluation after the accident, they would have to start all over again because they didn't do their job. So they fabricated entries regarding my medical, which, by the way, they're not even in my medical record.
So that's once again, that's the second time they fabricated.
That's the second time they fabricated. And this is a 3-star. It went all the way to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Mr. Woods, who then fabricated more things, saying that, so I got radiation in my body from Fukushima, and it's in my medical records. And then he was saying that I was fabricating radiation that was for the very first time discovered in 2017. So it had nothing to do with the time that I was in Brunswick, the Netherlands, with the accusations. I'm like, the discovery in my record, the discovery of the radiation is 2011. Where this 2017 comes from?
Wow.
Where does it come from? So the Assistant Secretary of the Navy fabricated documents too. And then, well, I get forced out. I get kicked out. I hit the civilian world. And then in 2019.
But you were able though to collect a 20-year retirement though, right? You were able to collect.
No.
Even though you were at 19 years.
Even though I was on 19 years. I submitted a package for the retirement and it was denied.
Oh my God. That's part I didn't catch in your story when I read the book, is that you didn't get a full pension for retirement.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Zero.
All right.
Zero. So I was able to get some VA benefits. So, I'm in the civilian world, starting all over again, trying to find my case. And still, but, work in the civilian world. And then 2019, so I moved, bought a house. I'm repairing it myself. I was working on the attic, beautiful attic where I'm sitting right now. And I would start working. I was going to law school as well. So I would start working. The days I didn't have to go to school, I start working at 8 until about noon, do it for hours.
Yep.
And I would take a quick lunch break, 30 minutes, go downstairs, and then come back again to work. And on my way downstairs, I would go to my mailbox, open it up, pull out, and I saw a letter addressed to me without a return address. Opened it up. It was a letter from Michelle.
Which is the British officer.
The British officer who made the accusations. So in the investigation, she wrote 3 different accusations that I approached her several times, that I asked her to lie, that I sexually harassed her, that I made made her feel uncomfortable. She asked me to shut up. And then between those accusations and through the process of the BOI, it's in my book as well, she wrote 4 to 5 communications where she began to change her tone. And one of the communications was, yeah, it happened, but I didn't feel sexually harassed. It was joking, but I guess somebody could argue there was sexual harassment, but it was really not. And then another communication, she was saying, no, you didn't do the alleged sexual performances or sexual acts in front of her, or saying these particular stories or whatever that never happened. She began to change her tone, short of admitting fully that this never happened. The conscience was biting her. Her conscience was killing her. I had several friends that actually wrote, and there's also in the book, saying that they had conversations with her, and she had explicitly told them, Andres never sexually harassed me, but she was too afraid to put it on paper. And she was being forced by the powers that be, British high-ranking officers, to tell her you're going to sign this, you're going to shut up, and you're not going to provide any evidence or speak on his behalf in the BOI, which is illegal.
Yes.
So it came 2019. So when I moved back over here, back to the Netherlands, when I bought this house here, a lot of people were still around, and I would bump into them. It's a very small community. It's a very small community. I mean, I live 12 minutes from where I used to work.
Sure.
So 2 villages over, and these villages are tiny. And I bought a very old house that, if you describe it, you can find it. Very small villages. Villages are like 850 people big. I mean, they're tiny. So
sounds like paradise.
it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
my friends are like, hey, Michelle is still here. She was able to extend. And she went to work at the position that I wanted to work at.
Yeah.
So it all really sounded like she didn't want to make the statements, but then they threw to the bone. Oh, you want to extend? You don't want to go back to the UK? No problem. We'll let you do it now as soon as you sign the statements. And we'll move you to the position that Andres wanted, that you really wanted, but you couldn't go to. So we'll figure it out.
It's disgusting.
To shut you up.
Absolutely disgusting.
So I opened the letter, and it's in the book. I think it's Appendix 89.
It is.
And it says clearly right there that I don't know it by heart, but she says that she felt pressured, obligated, forced to make the statements, and she should have stood up for what was right, but she was coward. But she cowered.
Yeah, can I read it? Just because I really think it's powerful. I'm just going to go full screen, and my audience is just going to have to humor me, because I've never done this full anatomy of what it really means to be falsely accused of sexual harassment. And this is her letter, the letter of the main person that was feeling sexually assaulted, or sexually harassed, rather. Dear Andres, I am happy to hear you are back in the area, knowing how much it means to you and your family. It is understandable you do not desire to chat and catch up. I hope you were able to sort through this mess. I feel terrible I could not help you as much as I wanted to, but I was in a precarious position. By the time I was interviewed the second time that May, they knew well I had approached you. It was rather clear it would fall on me if I did not blame you, and answered as they wanted. Days later, I was given several statements to immediately sign without being afforded time to read. I was then told it would bring this process to an end as far as it concerned me, and was ordered to ignore any request to be a witness. I finally was able to read these shortly before I wrote my last letter, but was worried of repercussions if I recanted. I always thought I would be this makes me cry when I read it. I always thought I would be much braver, but I discovered my true colors when I feared for my career. At the time, part of me urged to recant, to tell the truth, but regrettably I kept silent, and remorse has haunted me since. I never witnessed you express sexual banter, acts offensively, or anything which can be misinterpreted of the sort. You always treated me with respect, stood up for me as the good friend you were, and now I feel ashamed that when it was my turn, I cowered. I can only hope you were able to clear through this and hopefully someday forgive me. Michelle. The whole thing is just so sad.
Yep.
So sad.
So it's I applied to the Board of Corrections and Naval Records twice. The first time was before that letter arrived, and they told me to pound sand. And the second time was with the letter. I'm like, here I have a confession of not just it didn't happen, but the situation that she was in to make these.
And that she was coerced.
And that she was telling me to pound sand. And the funny thing is, that letter sent me for a spin for several weeks. And
I can see why.
But it wasn't until August 2021 where I saw that Kabul fell to the Taliban that I felt enraged that all the warnings that I was trying to give ended up being translated to the Taliban caught us by surprise by the highest ranks of the U.S. military. It caught us by surprise. ISIS caught us by surprise.
Right.
Yeah. And what this, I was told to shut up about ISIS because there are a bunch of pissed off Arabs that wouldn't amount to anything. I was told in 2015, I was told to shut up about ISIS. Okay, because it wouldn't amount to anything. In 2016, ISIS put a bomb in the Brussels airport, and it took the life of a wife of a member of the Brussels Command.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
Yeah.
Bunch of pissed off Arabs that would amount to anything. ISIS-K in Afghanistan put that bomb at Abbey Gate that killed those service members.
Yep.
And the command knew about this for years, but they told me to shut up. Around September 2nd or 3rd is when I started writing that book.
Well, I think your book is a work of art. I think it's a masterpiece. I think everybody should read it. I applaud you for writing it. I also admire the fact that you probably didn't get pre-publication review in this bullshit process that was talked about during Matt Bissonette's podcast, by the way, with Sean Ryan. I highly recommend it. It was where a Navy SEAL was thrown through the ringer and charged all of his book profits that he had already spent fighting the military. They then went after him, won, and now he's on Sean Ryan with Tim Parlatore pleading his case and trying to get this thing to go away. And it's all because the military wants to silence any whistleblower. And so they use these administrative procedures to silence people like yourself.
Yep.
And I think it's disgusting. I think it's reprehensible. And I think that until we see due process properly applied within the military justice system, I will continue to talk about it. And at this point, I just advise everybody to go public with their story because I don't know what else they can do at this point. And I hope you put in for another board of inquiry. I hope you keep on just pummeling them with this information and the proof that you do have, because it has to stop. And it starts with us, and it starts with the ability to speak up. So I want to thank you so much. Like I say, I know we went way beyond time.
Yeah, we did.
But I knew that this was the way this story had to be told. And I think as we close out the call, what advice would you give to somebody who is in a similar situation? Because I would imagine, since you've gone public with your story, you've had other people contact you and reach out. And what advice would you have for them?
I would, you know what, Stuart Scheller wrote a few weeks ago, I think a few months ago, he said that if you kept quiet about what's happening in Afghanistan because you felt worried about your career, you're a coward.
I remember that.
But he wrote that a few months ago. I would love to be able to talk to Stuart Scheller and share my story with him.
I would love to be able to as well.
I would tell you, stand up for what's right. Because a lot of people with a lot of shiny stuff, there's a lot of them that are cowards.
I agree.
There's a lot of them that they will kiss anybody's ass to get that rank, to get that position. Even with everything that's happened to me, I can stand tall. I got my honor.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And I really admire what you did.
I have my honor, and I gave the warnings, and I told them, and I would love to have the opportunity to stand in that Afghanistan commission, show my book, show my evidence, and tell them this mess didn't start in 2021. This mess, according to my book and according to what I saw, started as early as 2013. Probably even before that.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, ladies, please read my book and go after these names, because these people are responsible. And they collected the very nice paychecks, and they went to the very nice places, and it was all about spring break, drinking parties. Do what's right. That's what I would say.
Do the right thing. I love it. I love it.
Do the right thing. I mean, I was in a position that I remember the job on May 2015, when the Taliban was taking control of Kunduz province and making some serious advances. The JOC shut down because the JOC director, Army Colonel, took a bunch of his preferred officers on a multiple-day drinking trip to France. The JOC, as the Taliban is advancing, the JOC shut down on a drinking trip. Do what's right.
Do the right thing. I love it. All right. Well, I'm going to go full screen, say goodbye to my audience. I want to thank you so much, Andreas. Hopefully I pronounced it right. I'm still not great with accented names, but I am working on it. However, please, please, please listen to this full podcast. That's all I want people to do. I really want people to hear what you have to say. We'll cut this up into some shorter reels, and we'll make a blog out of it to hopefully get some more interest. But this is an important story, and you have really broke down how this happens. And I really believe for those people who say, oh, this could never happen, of course you don't make an allegation unless it's true. Obviously, that's not true. And this is exactly how it goes down. So I'm going to go full screen. I'll meet you backstage to say goodbye. I'm just going to say goodbye to my audience. All right, guys, that is a wrap. Thank you so much. You can see I'm even on a different camera now because this one went a little over time, but that is okay because it was that important to get this kind of story out. And sometimes when I need to hear a full story, this is just what we need to do to get that story out to the public. Tomorrow, we will have another incredibly hard story. This week is a military justice week. I am having a former Army commanding officer from West Point come on and bring his story of a false allegation. So we will once again revisit this issue, and we will talk about it in another context. Because as you guys know, I'm not going to stop talking about changing the process by which we adjudicate problems in the military until the process is fair. So guess I'll be talking about it for a while. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. As I always say, take care of each other, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and enjoy the rest of your day.